Imagine trying to save the world, but every time you open your mouth, you sound like a complete psychopath. Yeah, our protagonist's life is basically that level of disaster. While most people reincarnated into games become overpowered heroes with cheat skills and easy lives, this guy pulled the absolute worst possible role. He wakes up as the most hated villain in the entire game, a rich noble who is arrogant, cruel, feared by everyone, and destined to get killed by the final boss in the future. Now, the protagonist wants to change the story and save people, but there's one huge problem. The game's system forces his mouth to speak nothing but twisted, villainous lines completely opposite to what he actually thinks. So now, he has to survive in a world where every word coming out of his mouth makes him look like a complete monster. Will he be able to change his fate when the game itself won't let him say what he truly wants? To find out, let's explore the story. At the start of the story, the protagonist, Kazuki Hirasawa, is shown getting reincarnated into a game. He is left shocked and keeps wondering why he ended up in such a situation. Soon after, a scene appears where a man is yelling at a maid. As the maid tries to apologize, the man angrily tells her to stay quiet. Seeing this, Kazuki starts wondering if this could really be a game event, because the console game Braveheart is a fantasy RPG where the main character, Liner, stops a plot to destroy the world. Kazuki explains that even though the game has a 2D battle screen, it is filled with action, and players never get bored of its exciting battle system. It also has a straight story and many interesting features. Since he had played the game many times, he had become completely addicted to it and had almost memorized every line from the events. Because of that, Kazuki could not mistake the event happening right in front of him. The man shouting was Hayden, the head of the Stokes family. His wife's name was Jessica, and the person being yelled at was Clara, a servant of the Stokes family. Kazuki becomes extremely nervous as he watches the game characters moving in front of him, wondering if everything is actually real. What worries him even more is that he has been thrown into such a dark event, because this is the moment where Clara, the mother of the main heroine, is supposed to be executed by Harold, the eldest son of the Stokes family. Kazuki starts wondering where Harold is in the game. Suddenly, he realizes that Jessica is holding him in her arms. He quickly begins shaking and moving his hands in panic. A moment later, he hears Jessica gently telling him not to worry, because his mother is right there with him. At that moment, Kazuki becomes completely stressed after realizing that he himself is Harold and has been reincarnated into Harold's body. At the same time, Hayden becomes even more furious and is about to strike Clara down. But before he can do it, Kazuki suddenly tells Hayden to stop because he will handle Clara himself. Deep inside, Kazuki is completely shocked because his body is moving on its own and saying things he never wanted to say. Hayden then asks what he plans to do with her. Kazuki replies that he has learned some new magic and wants to test it on Clara by using her as a training dummy. Hearing this, Hayden becomes pleased and orders the knights to throw Clara into the dungeon. Both Hayden and Jessica look down on all the servants because they believe that anyone without pure blood is not worthy enough to stand at the same level as them. Kazuki feels completely disgusted with himself after saying such cruel things, but Harold Stokes was originally a cruel and arrogant person. In the world of Braveheart, Harold was known as the most hated character and was destined to die at the hands of Justice, the final boss of the story. Kazuki keeps wondering why he ended up becoming Harold and whether he is simply dreaming or has truly been reincarnated. While thinking about all of that in his room, Kazuki suddenly hears a knock on the door. Before he can even think properly, his mouth automatically tells the person to enter. Kazuki becomes even more confused because his voice keeps speaking on its own without listening to what he truly wants to say. Soon, the butler walks into the room, and Kazuki immediately recognizes him as Norman, the head butler of the Stokes family. Norman is known as a wise and sensible man and is often called the conscience of the Stokes family. During a dangerous event that once put the Stokes family in great danger, Norman was the one who saved them. Kazuki then asks if Norman has some business with him. Norman replies that he does, as there is something he wishes to discuss. Kazuki becomes nervous, wondering what Norman is about to ask him. Norman first asks whether Kazuki is feeling unwell, but Kazuki quickly replies that he is fine. He wants to answer calmly with a gentle smile, yet his body and voice refuse to follow his thoughts. Kazuki soon realizes that every word he wants to say is being changed into Harold's usual way of speaking. At the same time, Norman feels confused as well. He wonders why Harold seems hesitant to openly show his dissatisfaction, since Harold normally never hides his feelings. Still, Norman decides to get straight to the point and asks Harold to reduce the punishment given to Clara. Kazuki immediately remembers that Harold now has complete control over Clara's life, and he feels that he must save her somehow with all his ability. However, he soon starts wondering if changing the story is truly the right thing to do, because Clara's daughter, Colette, is supposed to become the main heroine of the game. According to the original story, Clara was meant to be burned to death by Harold's magic, while Colette would be chased out of the Stokes territory and later rescued by the protagonist's family. Kazuki starts wondering what he should do next. If he saves Clara now, the original story might completely change. In truth, Kazuki wants to become Colette's ally, but he knows he does not have enough power to do something that big yet. On top of that, it is already difficult for him to act in a way that does not make others hate him even more. More than anything else, he wants to avoid the death flags waiting for Harold at all costs. However, he also realizes that avoiding certain actions might change the story too much and could lead him to an even worse ending. To avoid changing the story too much while still leading things toward a safer outcome for himself, Kazuki decides that he will somehow save Clara in another way. At that moment, he truly wants to say that he wishes to help her, but once again his voice refuses to follow his real thoughts. Instead, he coldly asks Norman if he is telling him to personally save that woman. Kazuki becomes furious with himself because his body and voice still refuse to let him speak normally. Since he cannot control it properly, he decides to continue acting that way and harshly tells Norman that if he truly wants to save Clara, then he should take action first. After that, Kazuki says he will listen to whatever Norman has to say. Norman tries to speak, but Kazuki impatiently orders him to hurry up and leave. After Norman leaves the room, Kazuki sits down and starts thinking about what he should do next, as his strange way of speaking is only making his image worse. For a moment, he even thinks about giving up and dying, hoping that death in this world might send him back to his original world. But he quickly rejects that idea because dying in the game might also mean dying in real life. Feeling stressed, Kazuki suddenly stands up with force, causing several books and objects to fall out of Harold's cupboard. When he looks closer, he notices an empty life potion bottle and a red marble. He immediately realizes that both items are from the game itself. He also finds a few books and decides to read them, hoping they might give him some clue about how to escape this situation. But before doing anything else, he decides to first confirm whether he is truly inside the world of Braveheart or in some world that only looks similar to it. To figure that out, he plans to compare his own knowledge of the game with the knowledge of the current world. At the same time, he decides to prepare another trump card for himself so he can somehow break free from the dead end he is trapped in. The next day, Kazuki goes to the dungeon to meet Clara. When he arrives there, he orders the guards and the caretaker to stay outside and make sure nobody enters while he is inside, because he wants to speak alone with the prisoner in the dungeon. The guards and caretaker agree, and Kazuki slowly walks toward Clara before asking if she is Clara. After seeing Kazuki, Clara nervously asks if it is already the time for her to be treated like a puppet. Kazuki replies that it is, but he also says that he came for another reason, because he wants honest answers to a few questions. Clara becomes confused, but she still answers everything truthfully, especially anything related to herself. She explains that she has one daughter named Colette, and that her husband died from an illness 3 years ago. Hearing this, Kazuki finally understands why Colette has no relatives besides her mother. He then starts asking more questions about Colette, such as what kind of child she is and whether she has ever used magic before. From Clara's answers, he learns that Colette is only 9 years old and has no experience with magic or anything special yet. Kazuki feels relieved after hearing that, because everything is exactly the same as it was in the original storyline. After confirming all of this, he finally settles his plans for the future. Without saying much more, Kazuki starts walking away from the dungeon. Seeing this, Clara suddenly calls out to stop him. She desperately begs Kazuki to take care of Colette after she dies because she cannot bear the thought of her daughter living alone at such a young age. Clara pleads with him by saying that Colette has done nothing wrong to deserve such suffering. Kazuki wants to comfort Clara with kind words, but he already knows that his mouth will never allow him to speak the way he truly feels. Because of that, he ends up coldly saying that Clara is foolish for being trapped by something so meaningless. Hearing those words, Clara becomes confused and quietly starts thinking about what he meant. After leaving the dungeon, Kazuki keeps wondering what he should do next. He truly wants to comfort Clara, but he cannot properly express himself because of the strange way his voice works. When he returns to the castle, Norman arrives carrying several documents. Norman explains that they contain a map of the Stokes territory along with information about the settlements located within and around it. Kazuki first asks Norman how he plans to save Clara. Norman replies that the best option is to move her outside the Stokes territory. However, in order to do that, they would need to hand over some laborers and taxpayers to other nobles as compensation. Norman expects Kazuki to dislike the idea, but to his surprise, Kazuki calmly says that it does not matter to him at all. Deep down, Kazuki also feels that sending Clara somewhere beyond his family's influence would be the safest choice for her. Kazuki then asks which town Norman has in mind. As Norman points to a place on the map, Kazuki becomes shocked after realizing that it is the same village where Liner's family lives. That means this is likely the point in the story where Liner and Colette are supposed to meet for the first time. Kazuki quickly starts asking more about the plan, especially whether Clara and her daughter would be allowed to travel freely through the territories of other nobles. Norman explains that there are no major restrictions unless someone is a merchant or a noble. However, he also points out that it would still be difficult for Clara to survive in a completely unfamiliar place without anything to support herself, so she would at least need the basic necessities to live. Kazuki quickly understands the plan and realizes that they will also need to prepare one of the family wagons and provide Clara with some money for living expenses. On top of that, they would also need travel permission, which he feels would be a huge problem to arrange. Hearing all of this, Norman becomes completely stunned. He cannot understand how Harold knows about Clara's daughter, why he is so concerned about them, or why he acts so differently from his parents. The only conclusion Norman can come to is that Harold is still young and has started genuinely thinking about other people. Soon, Norman's thoughts become even more twisted as he starts wondering if Harold had been trying to hint at something from the very beginning. Maybe Harold never truly planned to use Clara as a magic test subject and only lied about it because he secretly wanted to save her. Thinking about all this fills Norman with excitement, and he becomes fully determined to help Harold save Clara no matter what. Norman then suggests a few more ways to secretly send Clara away, but Kazuki rejects each idea while giving reasonable explanations. Watching this, Norman becomes even happier and starts believing that Harold might become the ray of hope that changes the cruel Stokes family in the future. The scene then shifts to the next day, where Kazuki is practicing his Raging Flames magic. After many failed attempts, he finally manages to use the spell somehow, although it is still far weaker than the version he remembers from the game. Even so, he feels excited simply because he was finally able to use magic. Filled with motivation, he keeps practicing again and again. Kazuki knows that if the burned area does not look convincing enough, people will grow suspicious because he plans to use the flames to trick everyone into believing that Clara was killed by his magic. After several more hours of training, he finally achieves the result he wanted. By then, he has fully made up his mind. Clara is no longer just a character on a game screen to him, and because of that, he becomes determined to carry out his plan that very night, no matter what happens, because failure is simply not an option anymore. The scene then shifts to nighttime, where Colette secretly comes to meet Clara in the dungeon. Clara becomes shocked the moment she sees Colette, and the two quickly hug each other tightly. Watching them from nearby, Kazuki slowly walks toward them and tells them that he is going to give them two choices. The first choice is to die there at that very moment, while the second is to leave the land and begin a new life outside the Stokes territory. He explains that if they choose the first option, they will die immediately, but if they choose the second, they must never return again and will have to leave behind every relationship they made within the Stokes territory. Clara becomes completely stunned and asks if Harold is truly willing to let them escape. Kazuki harshly tells her to stop talking nonsense and hurry up with her decision, because killing her would be far easier and less troublesome for him. Clara quickly apologizes and says that she wants to live and will leave the territory as soon as possible. After that, Kazuki calls Colette closer to him. Once she steps near him, he hands her a small locket and tells her to always keep it around her neck and never remove it, because that is one of the conditions for their escape. Colette shyly agrees, but she becomes confused when Kazuki suddenly adds that if she ever meets a boy around her age who desires the locket, she should give it to him. In return, she must make him promise to protect her. Colette looks completely confused after hearing those words, which only makes Kazuki sound even more irritated. Seeing the situation, Clara gently explains to Colette that Harold is telling her to give the locket to someone who will protect her in the future. After finally understanding the meaning behind it, Colette quietly nods and says that she understands. After that, Kazuki tells Clara and Colette to leave while ordering the guards to escort them safely. Once again, his voice turns harsh as he warns them not to get discovered, because if the plan fails, their lives will be treated as if they never existed at all. Clara quietly thanks him before leaving the place with Colette. After they are gone, Kazuki tells Norman to return to the castle as well, saying that he still has some work left to do alone. Once Norman leaves, Kazuki starts thinking about Clara's final words and wonders why she thanked him at all. After all, Harold was the very reason behind all of this suffering in the first place. Even so, Kazuki does not feel proud of himself. The only thing that makes him feel relieved is knowing that Clara and Colette may finally be able to live peacefully from now on. Soon after, Kazuki realizes that it is finally time for him to carry out the last part of his plan. Meanwhile, as Norman walks back toward the castle, he cannot stop thinking about Harold. He starts wondering if it was really all right to leave him alone in such a situation. Because of that uneasy feeling, Norman decides to return and check on him. However, the moment he arrives, he is shocked by what he sees. Harold is laughing loudly while saying cruel words, and soon after he suddenly uses his flame crash magic to burn down a part of the forest. Norman quickly rushes toward him in panic. On the other hand, Kazuki becomes completely tense because his words had once again changed on their own, making him speak in Harold's cruel manner again. He had believed Norman was already back at the castle, so when he suddenly notices Norman standing behind him, he becomes stunned. Kazuki nervously asks what Norman is doing there, reminding him that he had ordered him to return first. Norman immediately apologizes in a tense voice, but Kazuki suddenly shouts at him and orders him to forget everything he just saw. He coldly warns Norman to bury those secrets with him in his grave and never tell another soul about them for the rest of his life. Norman quietly responds with a yes, but deep inside, he is filled with confusion. He cannot understand why Harold is trying so hard to hide his weakness from everyone. After thinking about it carefully, Norman finally comes to the conclusion that it must be because of Hayden and Jessica. If Harold were to show any disagreement or weakness in front of his parents, the consequence would likely be terrible for him. Because of that, Harold has been forced to deceive both his parents and everyone living in the estate. Norman starts wondering just how painful all of this must have been for him. He even begins blaming himself for never trying to truly understand Harold during all those 10 years. Because of that regret, Norman silently makes a promise to himself. From now on, he will dedicate the rest of his life to making up for those wasted years, until the heart of that innocent boy is no longer forced to hide behind the mask of evil. The scene then shifts to the wagon carrying Clara and Colette away from the Stokes territory. Clara remains silent as she keeps thinking about Harold and everything that happened. Meanwhile, the guards begin talking among themselves about the orders Kazuki had given them. He had strictly warned them to keep their mouths shut and not speak about this matter to anyone. According to the plan, once they reached Bloche village, Clara and Colette would stay there while one soldier would continue taking the wagon toward Litza. Harold had even prepared a travel permit for them by pretending that he wanted a sword crafted by a blacksmith in Litza. For that reason, he had provided the guards with several gold coins. However, the real purpose of the money was to support Clara and Colette during their new life, while the guards only needed to buy a cheap sword in return to avoid suspicion. The guards hand the money over to Clara and ask her to rest until they arrive, since the sun will rise soon. Clara gratefully thanks them for their kindness, but says that she would rather stay awake and look at the scenery because she has not been able to enjoy such peaceful sights for many days. One of the guards smiles warmly and says that he understands how she feels. As the night slowly passes, the sun finally begins to rise, and the wagon gradually approaches Bloche village. The scene then shifts back to the Stokes family mansion, where Hayden and Jessica are extremely pleased after hearing that Harold had burned Clara so completely that not even a corpse remained. The two proudly praise their son for what he supposedly did. Hearing their words makes Kazuki furious inside, but on the outside, he simply forces a smile while thinking that they should at least suspect him a little. However, neither of them doubts him at all. After that, Kazuki returns to his room and continues working on a few things by himself. While he is busy, a boy suddenly enters the room and asks Harold what he is doing. Kazuki coldly replies that it has nothing to do with him and tells the boy to close the door before calling him Zen. After that, Kazuki asks why Zen came into his room in the first place. Zen responds by asking whether Harold had forgotten that he was the one who accompanied him during the night of the final full moon, even though he was supposed to be unavailable at that time. Kazuki immediately tells him to stay quiet if he does not want to become food for monsters. Zen quickly agrees, but deep down he is surprised because Harold is not throwing him out of the room. It even seems to him that Harold does not care much about the difference in their social status. Of course, Zen does not realize that the person inside Harold's body is actually Kazuki, which naturally causes him to misunderstand Harold's true nature. Soon, Zen notices that Harold appears to be doing some kind of research. Curious, he walks closer and sees several strange grasses and plants. Because of that, he asks if Harold is growing them to eat. Kazuki originally wants to ask if Zen would like to try eating them himself, but once again, his mouth betrays him. Instead, he suddenly shouts that he should chop Zen into pieces and stuff him into the flower pot along with the plants. Zen quickly refuses in fear. Even so, he still begins explaining his own method of growing plants, pointing out that Harold's breeding method is a complete mess. Kazuki then explains that in some pots, he mixed the plants with water, while in others he did not. Seeing the item in Kazuki's hand, Zen asks if it is a life potion, because he has never heard of restorative medicine being used on crops before. Kazuki then explains that using it could help increase the crop's overall yield. However, the plants without enough water mixed into them would dry up before they could bear fruit. Because of that, he says he has been trying to find the perfect water ratio for growing them properly. After explaining, Kazuki tosses one of the crops toward Zen and orders him to eat it. Zen nervously asks if he really has to eat it raw. Kazuki replies with a yes and tells him that since he was the one who stuck his nose into this matter, he should blame his own careless actions instead. With no other choice left, Zen slowly eats the crop. However, the moment he tastes it, he becomes completely shocked because it is far sweeter and tastier than normal crops. Hearing that reaction makes Kazuki happy, and he immediately starts thinking about how he can make use of this idea in the future. Many natural disasters have damaged the Stokes territory over the years, causing farmers to suffer from poor harvests. Thanks to the information Norman provided him, Kazuki already knows about those problems. Because of that, he decides that he must remove as many future disadvantages as possible while he still has the chance. Kazuki then orders Zen to take the crops to the cooks and compare them with ordinary food by checking their taste, quality, and market value. Zen quickly agrees. After that, Kazuki firmly tells him to keep everything a complete secret. Zen looks extremely excited after being given such an important task and happily rushes out of the room to begin the work. Once he is alone again, Kazuki heads outside into the garden and begins practicing swordsmanship. While training, he realizes that he has slowly become used to Harold's body. He even starts wondering if Harold's physical abilities were naturally high from the beginning, since Harold was originally a strong fighter in battle. Even so, Kazuki feels happy because it means he might be able to improve both his magic and swordsmanship through hard work and eventually become as skilled as Harold was in the original story. In a dangerous RPG world like this, combat ability is necessary for survival. Since he is now living inside Harold's body, Kazuki knows there is also a chance that he may someday have to face the protagonist's party themselves. Because of that, he continues training without stopping. The scene then shifts to the home of the prestigious Sumaragi family, where a young girl is asking her parents about Harold, the son of the Stokes family. Her parents sadly apologize to her because they feel terrible about the situation she's been forced into. The girl's name is Erica, and she gently tells both her father and mother not to apologize. She says that this decision is being made for the sake of protecting their people and saving the territory. So as the daughter of the Sumaragi family, it is also her responsibility to accept it. The reason behind their conversation is Erica's arranged marriage with Harold. The miasma spreading through the Sumaragi territory has become far worse, and nearly 30% of the mountain area has already been consumed by it. Because of the spreading miasma, many citizens have started falling ill as well. If the situation continues like this, the Sumaragi family will lose their forestry industry completely and will no longer be able to support their territory. To receive economic help from the Stokes family, they have no choice but to sacrifice their daughter's future through this marriage. In exchange for Erica marrying Harold, the Stokes family has agreed to financially support the struggling Sumaragi territory. After the conversation ends, Erica quietly leaves the room. Outside, a girl named Yuno calls out to her with concern. However, Erica calmly tells Yuno to leave her alone because she is fine. Deep inside, Erica believes that she is completely powerless in this situation. Because of that, she feels there is no point in worrying about herself since it would not change or save anything at all. The next scene takes place inside the Stokes mansion, where a man is sitting in front of Kazuki while carefully looking through several documents. Kazuki explains that the papers are copies of the revenue and expense reports that the man himself prepared, and he asks if there are any major mistakes in them. The man is Jake, the agricultural inspector of the Stokes family. Jake replies that he could not find any serious errors. Hearing that, Kazuki tells him not to worry because he did not call him there to cause trouble. He explains that the Stokes family finances are slowly falling apart, and the biggest reason behind it is Hayden and Jessica. According to Kazuki, the two of them are wasting the family's wealth while forcing heavy taxes onto the citizens, which is only increasing the burden on the people living in the territory. Kazuki then asks Jake whether he agrees with that opinion or not. Jake carefully admits that there is some truth in what Harold is saying. He explains that many people have already been forced to shut down their farms because of financial difficulties. Kazuki agrees and says that the situation has already become an emergency. If things continue like this, even the Stokes family itself may eventually collapse. Suddenly, Kazuki starts laughing and says that such a collapse might actually be beneficial for a bastard like Jake. Hearing those words, Jake quickly tells him not to speak so carelessly because if someone overhears it, they might think he is planning a rebellion. Kazuki then calmly says that unless they increase the profits from the agricultural sector, he can already see bankruptcy waiting for them in the future. That is the exact reason why he called Jake there today. Jake nervously asks what Kazuki means by that. At that moment, Kazuki calls for Zen. Zen happily walks toward Jake while carrying tea and asks him to taste it. Jake becomes confused after seeing the strange red vegetable served with it. Zen then proudly explains that it is a special relish handmade by Harold himself. Kazuki immediately gets annoyed and tells Zen not to interrupt the conversation like that again unless he wants to be turned into fertilizer. Hearing that, Zen quickly apologizes in a nervous voice. On the other hand, Jake feels completely unsure about what he should do since the food was personally made by Harold himself. In the end, he realizes he has no real choice, so he quietly takes a bite without thinking too much about it. However, the moment he tastes it, he becomes shocked because it is much sweeter and better than he expected. Hearing Jake's reaction makes Zen look extremely proud of himself, but Kazuki quickly asks why Zen is acting proud when he was not the one who made it. After that, Kazuki turns back toward Jake and tells him that he wants his help in spreading this farming method throughout the territory. Jake looks confused and asks why Kazuki specifically chose him for the task. Kazuki explains that introducing the method will naturally require money and planning, even if it does not need any special equipment. Because of that, someone like Jake, who understands the Stokes family finances and farmland better than anyone else, would be the perfect person to calculate the costs and decide where the method should be introduced first. Jake spends a few moments thinking seriously about it before finally saying that if this technique can truly improve the current situation, then he would like to help with all his ability. Even so, some hesitation still remains on his face. Kazuki immediately notices Jake's hesitation and realizes that he would probably refuse if he knew the entire truth behind everything. Because of that, Kazuki suddenly jokes that if Hayden had been there instead, he might have gotten angry at Jake and thrown him straight into the dungeon. Jake becomes completely stunned after hearing that, while Norman and Zen burst into laughter nearby. Seeing the nervous look on Jake's face, Kazuki calmly says that it is actually a good thing, because if there were another person like Zen around, his worries would only increase even more. Zen instantly looks surprised after hearing that, and quickly asks Kazuki what exactly he means by those words. Kazuki tells Zen to use his brain a little more before speaking. After saying that, he walks toward the table, picks up the life potion, and begins explaining that this potion is the key to everything. He says that the farming method works by using diluted life potion on crops, and because of that, he has decided to call it the LP farming method. He further explains that they will first share this method with only a few farmers and begin testing it on a small scale. The reason for doing that is to reduce financial risk in case something goes wrong. Kazuki also says that if the method fails badly, they will provide support to the farmers who cannot spare any more land for LP farming. Even if the method succeeds, they still plan to control its spread carefully, so the economic gap between farmers does not become too large. Kazuki then explains that they are lucky because they already have an expired stock of life potions, meaning they do not need to spend extra money for the first investment. However, the greatest advantage of the LP farming method is the unbelievable growth speed. Depending on the amount of potion used and the type of crop, the size and taste may differ, but the growth rate is abnormally fast. As an example, Kazuki explains that the red fruit usually takes around 2 months to harvest under normal conditions, but with the LP method, it can grow fully within only 5 to 7 days. Hearing that leaves Jake completely shocked. He cannot believe that Harold managed to harvest the fruit in only 5 days. Jake then says that it might actually be better not to spread the method too widely, because if cheap but high-quality crops suddenly flood the market, it could destroy the farmers living outside the Stokes territory. Deep inside, Kazuki actually agrees, but for a different reason. He is secretly afraid for his own safety, because if news spreads that he was the one who invented the LP farming method, there is a high chance he could end up being targeted or even killed. Kazuki then says that they need to begin the project as quickly as possible before Hayden finds out about it. He also explains that if the Stokes family gains more economic freedom through this method, they may eventually be able to experiment with many other kinds of crops as well. Suddenly, Kazuki notices that everyone is staring at him with strange expressions, so he angrily asks if they enjoy giving him such foolish looks. Jake quickly apologizes while Norman calmly says that he simply finds Kazuki's actions admirable. Hearing that completely surprises Kazuki. Deep down, he cannot believe that Norman would admire someone as inexperienced as him. Kazuki actually wants to tell them that he hopes to rely on their support in the future, but because he is trapped in Harold's body, his words once again come out far more aggressive than intended. Instead, he harshly says that he does not need useless yes-men around him. If they ever think something is wrong with his decisions, then they should speak honestly and advise him without hiding anything. Both Norman and Jake immediately agree. At that moment, Jake starts thinking about how hard Harold is pushing himself. Discovering a completely new farming method alone would already be impressive, yet Harold had also managed to create careful policies around it without ignoring the risks involved. To Jake, it feels like Kazuki is carrying far too much responsibility on his own shoulders. Meanwhile, Norman quietly thinks that Harold is completely different from Hayden and Jessica. Unlike them, Harold does not seem interested in gaining money, fame, or honor for himself. Instead, he only wants to help the people living within the territory. Because of that, Norman starts believing that Harold truly has the qualities needed to become a great leader someday. Finally, Kazuki once again asks Jake whether he is ready to become his helping hand in this plan. Jake immediately stands up and firmly replies that he will use every bit of strength he has to help him. However, Kazuki suddenly shouts at him and says that he should not do it for Harold's sake, but for the suffering people living in the territory. Kazuki harshly declares that if the people do not follow the plan he proposed, they may not survive at all, because they are too weak to endure the current situation any longer. The next morning during lunch, Hayden suddenly tells Kazuki that his marriage partner has already been decided. Hearing that, Kazuki nervously asks who it is. Hayden calmly explains that the girl is the daughter of the Sumaragi family and that this marriage will further strengthen the Stokes family bloodline. He also mentions that the Sumaragi family wishes to meet Kazuki soon, so in the next 2 or 3 days they will be traveling to the Sumaragi territory. Hearing this, Kazuki immediately starts thinking about Harold's fiancée from the original game. He remembers that the Sumaragi family was one of the noble families that helped establish the country and had deep ties with the royal family. Because of that, a marriage between the Stokes and Sumaragi families would greatly increase the prestige of the Stokes family's pure-blood beliefs. However, Kazuki also knows the real reason behind this marriage because of his knowledge from the game. The Sumaragi family is being forced to give away their beloved daughter only because they desperately need financial support to save their territory. Since the Stokes family already treats most people as less than human, the entire situation feels extremely uncomfortable and troublesome to him. Kazuki starts feeling stressed again because just when he thought he could finally relax, after leaving the LP farming project to Norman and Jake, another complicated problem appeared in front of him. However, a moment later, he suddenly remembers that the Sumaragi territory is suffering heavily because of the spreading miasma. Thinking about that gives Kazuki a completely different idea, and a small smile slowly appears on his face. The next scene shows Kazuki reading through a book while carefully looking at several ingredients such as anise, hyssop, and different kinds of herbs. As he studies them, he starts thinking about creating a type of medicine that could help the Sumaragi family deal with the miasma problem. Kazuki's real reason for doing this is because the head of the Sumaragi family, Tasuku, is known to be a compassionate and understanding man with many powerful connections. Kazuki believes that if he can get Tasuku on his side, it will become much easier for him to take action in the future. It would also help him secretly support the protagonists, Linner and the others, from the shadows. Of course, Kazuki also realizes that interfering like this may cause events to happen differently from the original story. Even so, he believes that gaining Tasuku as an ally is worth the risk. Because of that, Kazuki sees this visit to the Sumaragi family as a valuable opportunity to build a connection with them. However, while he is deep in thought, Zen suddenly interrupts him from behind and asks if he is developing another new farming method. Zen even excitedly asks if he can help with it. Kazuki immediately becomes irritated and angrily asks why Zen is even there. Zen casually replies that he simply has a holiday today. Hearing that only annoys Kazuki even more, so he forcefully kicks Zen out of the room. After that, the scene shows Kazuki spending the next few days researching ingredients, practicing swordsmanship, and then collapsing into sleep from exhaustion. Finally, after 3 days pass, Kazuki is shown writing a letter before preparing for the journey to the Sumaragi territory. Once they arrive there, both Kazuki and Hayden are welcomed by one of the caretakers of the Sumaragi household. Before entering the house, however, they are asked to remove their shoes. Hayden looks visibly uncomfortable because it is his first time experiencing such a custom, but the caretaker politely asks them to respect it since it is an important part of their culture. Afterward, they are guided deeper into the house toward a room where Erica and the rest of the Sumaragi family are already sitting and waiting for them. After entering the room, Kazuki becomes fascinated the moment he sees Erica. The very first thing that comes to his mind is that she is one of Liner's future companions. Because of that, he immediately realizes that he must be extremely careful around her. Erica is someone with a deeply kind and sympathetic nature. She treats everyone equally and can even cry for monsters. However, the one person she truly hated in the original story was Harold. Even so, because the Sumaragi family depended on the Stokes family's financial support, she could never completely turn her back on him. This makes Kazuki start worrying about what might happen now. Since he is no longer the real Harold and is actually Kazuki inside, what if Erica's opinion changes after seeing his true kindness? And if that happens, what if she never joins Liner's hero party in the future? That outcome would be extremely dangerous. Erica is an important healer who is desperately needed in the hero's party, and without her, the battle against the final boss could completely change. Kazuki knows that even if he manages to avoid all of Harold's death flags, it would still mean nothing if Liner fails to defeat the final boss. If the hero loses, the world itself will be destroyed, and Kazuki would die along with everyone else. Because of that, he understands that he must carefully control his actions so that Erica will still eventually join Liner's party no matter what. Soon after, Tasuku, the head of the Sumaragi family, politely introduces himself and his family. He introduces his wife, Koyomi, and his daughter, Erica. Kazuki then introduces himself as Harold Stokes and politely says that he is pleased to meet them. Deep inside, Kazuki is completely shocked that Harold's mouth is actually capable of speaking such respectful words. A little later, Hayden casually asks Erica whether she thinks Harold is handsome. Erica quietly agrees, but Kazuki barely pays attention because he is busy thinking about another problem. He needs to somehow hand over the letter he brought so it can safely reach Tasuku. Surprisingly, the perfect opportunity soon arrives on its own. The Sumaragi family suggests that Erica and Harold should spend some time alone together so they can speak freely and get to know each other better. Hayden immediately agrees with the idea. Hearing that, Kazuki finally realizes that this is the chance he was waiting for. Following her father's request, Erica quietly stands up and politely asks Harold to follow her. Kazuki agrees, but deep inside, he becomes extremely tense. He feels that from this moment onward, everything has become a true do-or-die situation for him. Erica leads Kazuki toward a large tree before introducing herself once again as Erica Sumaragi, the daughter of Tasuku Sumaragi. Kazuki also introduces himself in return, and after that, Erica begins talking about the tree standing before them. She explains that it is called a cherry blossom tree and that its flowers are a symbol of the Sumaragi family. She continues sharing stories about the meaning of the tree, the history behind it, and how deeply it is connected to her family. After quietly listening to her explanation, Kazuki comments that the tree looks different from the cherry blossoms he knows about. Erica becomes surprised after hearing that and asks if he is familiar with cherry blossoms as well. However, Kazuki quickly changes the direction of the conversation and coldly says that he cannot properly explain it to her, and besides, he does not really care much about such things anyway. Hearing that answer makes Erica upset, and she asks if he has no interest in the Sumaragi family at all. Kazuki becomes frustrated because that was not what he truly meant to say. Still, since the topic has already changed, he decides to simply go along with it. Because of that, he tells Erica to interpret his words however she wants. Unfortunately, Erica takes his words in the worst possible way and asks if all he truly wants in the end is the Sumaragi family name and status. Hearing that, Kazuki starts thinking that perhaps it would actually be better if Erica hated him. Since he already wants her to eventually stay close to Liner instead of himself, he decides to act even harsher on purpose. Because of that, he loudly asks if she is misunderstanding something. He says that the Stokes family name is not inferior to the Sumaragi family either, and that he cannot believe such a respected noble family would come crying to them so pitifully for help. Erica immediately becomes furious and asks what exactly he just said. Kazuki grows tense because deep inside he knows he has badly insulted her. However, there is nothing he can do since he still has no real control over his mouth. At this point, though, he is no longer surprised by it because he already understands that these cruel words are simply Harold's natural way of speaking. Before the conversation can ruin his real objective, Kazuki quickly takes out the letter and tries to hand it to Erica. Seeing it, she angrily asks what it is supposed to be. Kazuki harshly tells her to stop talking and just take it. He says that since her family came begging for help in the first place, the least she can do is give the letter to her father. Erica refuses at first and starts walking away. However, Kazuki suddenly tells her that if she truly wishes to watch her suffering people die, then she is free to leave. Hearing those words makes Erica stop in her tracks. She quickly realizes that the letter might contain something important that could save her people. Because of that, she turns back and asks him what is written inside it. Kazuki replies that the letter may contain information that could help save the Sumaragi territory. Erica slowly walks back and finally accepts the letter. Even then, she coldly tells him that she cannot trust him at all, but for the sake of her people, she has no choice except to take it. Kazuki calmly replies that she does not need to trust him without reason. He tells her that she can decide what kind of person he truly is after seeing the results herself. The scene then shifts to some time later after Kazuki returns to the Stokes mansion, where Norman welcomes him back. Norman politely tells him to get some rest after the long journey, but Kazuki seriously tells him to skip unnecessary talk and directly explain how the LP farming project is progressing. Norman reports that everything is going smoothly. They have already explained the method to several farmers and secured enough usable farmland without any major problems, meaning the trials can officially begin in around 10 days. Hearing that, Kazuki tells Norman to continue following Jake's guidance for the time being. Norman agrees immediately. Afterward, Kazuki quietly starts thinking to himself, since the LP farming project is moving forward without trouble, his next focus must be the situation within the Sumaragi territory. He cannot imagine Erica ignoring even the slightest chance to save her suffering people, which means she will definitely give the letter to Tasuku. However, Kazuki also knows that the information he wrote in the letter only explains the ingredients needed to create antibiotics and the spread of the miasma contamination. It is not enough to completely solve the real problem. Because of that, Kazuki believes the situation will still eventually push Erica toward joining Liner's hero party in the future. Now, Kazuki starts worrying about Tasuku as well because he has no idea whether Tasuku will actually trust the contents of such a strange letter written by a 10-year-old child and seriously try to make the antibiotics mentioned inside it. Even if the plan fails, however, Kazuki decides that he will find some other way to approach Tasuku and gain his trust. The scene then shifts to a few days later, where Kazuki is practicing swordsmanship with one of the knights from the estate. However, the knight looks completely terrified and can barely fight properly. Kazuki angrily tells him to use his full strength and fight seriously if he does not want to die. Even so, the knight still cannot gather the courage to attack with everything he has, and eventually collapses from fear and exhaustion. Seeing that, Kazuki realizes that asking one of the estate soldiers to train with him was a mistake from the beginning. Because of Hayden's terrifying reputation, none of the knights dare to challenge Harold with their true strength. For a moment, Kazuki considers asking Hayden himself to spar with him, but he quickly rejects that dangerous idea. Just then, a butler suddenly arrives and informs Kazuki that he is a visitor waiting to meet him. Hearing that completely surprises Kazuki. He cannot understand why anyone would come to visit him at a time like this. Deep down, he even wonders whether Harold ever had any real friends at all. However, the moment he learns the visitor's identity, he becomes even more shocked. The person who came to see him is none other than Erica herself. Kazuki immediately grows confused and starts wondering why Erica would suddenly come all the way to his house just to meet him. Kazuki angrily asks Erica why she came all the way to his house. Hearing that, Erica looks surprised and asks whether he should not first apologize for making her wait for so long. Kazuki immediately snaps back and says that, unlike her, he does not have endless free time, so she should feel grateful that he even came to meet her at all. Erica becomes slightly annoyed as well, but she still apologizes for suddenly visiting without notice. Even then, she hesitates to continue speaking. Seeing her reaction, Kazuki quickly understands the situation and orders the maid nearby to leave the room. After that, he sits down in front of Erica and impatiently tells her to hurry up and say whatever she came to say. Erica first expresses her gratitude on behalf of the Sumaragi family, explaining that thanks to the medicine, they were able to save many of their citizens. Hearing this makes Kazuki realize that Tasuku truly followed the instructions from the letter and successfully created the antibiotics. More importantly, the medicine actually worked. Even though Kazuki wants to respond kindly, Harold's mouth once again speaks on its own and coldly says that the Sumaragi family must have been driven into such a desperate corner that they were willing to rely on something so suspicious and unreliable. Erica quietly agrees, admitting that her family truly has no other options left at the moment. Kazuki then tells her that she should show even more gratitude for his generosity. However, he quickly adds that she should not misunderstand his intentions, because the medicine he suggested is only a temporary solution. It cannot completely solve the problem and may even cause side effects in the future. Erica immediately understands what he means and nervously asks if the medicine will not fully cure the illness caused by the miasma. Kazuki agrees and says that it is very possible. He then coldly adds that he never intended to care that deeply about the people of her territory anyway. Erica awkwardly accepts his words because deep inside, she believes his attitude is only natural. After all, their engagement was arranged purely for political reasons. However, the thing that truly confuses her is how far Harold went to help them in the first place. She cannot stop wondering when exactly he developed the medicine. Did he begin working on it after their engagement was decided, or did he somehow manage to create it within only a few days? While Erica is lost in her own thoughts, Kazuki suddenly interrupts her by asking whether she came all the way to his house only to thank him, or if there is something else she wants to say. Erica then hands him a letter and explains that her father sent it for him. Kazuki quickly realizes that Erica came as a messenger for Tasuku, so he opens the letter and begins reading it. Inside, Tasuku expresses his sincere gratitude toward Harold for helping the people of the Sumaragi territory. He also writes that simply thanking him through a letter alone feels completely insufficient. However, for the moment, they are still carefully observing the condition of the patients who received the medicine. Just when Kazuki thinks the letter has ended, he notices another paper attached behind it. The moment he reads it, he becomes completely stunned. The second letter explains that the Sumaragi territory is currently suffering from a strange condition and they do not know what kind of unexpected problems may happen next. Because of that, Tasuku reluctantly asks Harold for a favor. Until the situation becomes stable again, he wishes for Erica to stay safely at the Stokes estate for the time being. After reading that request, Kazuki becomes completely shocked and nervously wonders what kind of situation this has turned into. Seeing his reaction, Erica also becomes confused and asks what happened. Once she reads the letter herself, she becomes equally stunned. She awkwardly says that it would likely cause him trouble if they were to suddenly start living under the same roof, especially when they are only engaged for political reasons. However, there is another problem. The carriage that brought Erica to the Stokes estate has already left, meaning she now has no choice except to rely on Harold's kindness for help. Hearing that immediately makes Kazuki shout her name in frustration before asking if she really has the nerve to put him in such a position. To his surprise, Erica simply smiles and says that she feels honored by his praise. Hearing that only makes Kazuki even more irritated, and he loudly says that there is nothing honorable about forcing such a one-sided request onto someone else. Erica quietly replies that he is being rather cold despite helping an entire territory, yet treating his own fiancée so harshly. Kazuki angrily says that he expected much more in return for his generosity, but instead everything has gone completely against his expectations. Because of that, he firmly declares that he absolutely refuses the request. Without arguing further, Erica calmly accepts his answer. She quietly says that she should not ask anything more from Harold-sama, and slowly begins preparing to leave the room. After Erica left the room, Kazuki started thinking about her words. He wondered why she had given up and left so quickly, and because of that, he began getting a very bad feeling about the entire situation. Suddenly, he noticed a Stokes family carriage waiting outside, which only made him even more nervous about what was going to happen next. The next scene shows Kazuki sitting in front of Hayden with an extremely irritated expression. A few hours after Erica left, Hayden had called him over and informed him that Lady Erica would be staying at the Stokes estate for a while. When Kazuki immediately replied that he had no interest in that arrangement, Hayden simply told him not to be embarrassed because both families had already agreed to it. Hayden further explained that Erica was scheduled to arrive at the eastern gate of the territory early the next morning, meaning Kazuki himself would have to go and pick her up. Hearing that made Kazuki realize that his bad feeling had been completely correct from the beginning. However, now that Hayden had personally approved the arrangement, Kazuki had no choice except to obey his father's orders. At the same time, Kazuki also realized something important. Erica had most likely planned to stay at the Stokes estate from the very beginning. The biggest problem for Kazuki now was figuring out how to deal with this unexpected situation. More importantly, he was certain that the main cause behind all of this was the letter he had given to the Sumaragi family, because none of these events had ever happened in the original story. The next morning, Kazuki waits at the eastern gate for Erica's arrival. The moment she sees him there, she smiles happily and says that she feels honored to be personally welcomed by Harold himself. Kazuki quickly replies that things are not the way she is imagining them. However, while speaking, he suddenly notices another girl standing beside Erica. Confused, Kazuki asks who she is. Erica explains that the girl's name is Yuno and that she serves as her personal attendant, helping take care of her daily needs. After that, Yuno politely greets Kazuki as well. Kazuki started wondering what exactly was going on. Even though Erica alone was already troublesome enough for him, now another girl had suddenly appeared beside her, and he did not even remember hearing about someone like Yuno in the original story. Still, after thinking about it for a while, Kazuki finally decided that the best option would be to completely avoid both girls for as long as they stayed at the mansion. Because of that, he coldly told Erica and Yuno not to get in his way at all during their stay. The two girls calmly agreed and replied that they understood. However, deep inside, Kazuki honestly wished they would simply return back to their own home, though he already knew that was impossible now. Afterward, the scene shifts to Hayden proudly making an announcement in front of everyone about the arrival of their future daughter-in-law in the Stokes territory. Hearing all of that only makes Kazuki more irritated. Deep down, he keeps wondering what kind of idiot Hayden truly is, because to him, the entire event feels more like some public display than a proper welcome. However, things become even worse for Kazuki soon after. Hayden suddenly orders him to personally take Erica around the town the next day and show her the territory. According to Hayden, a noble must know how to properly escort and entertain a woman. Erica quietly agrees to the plan and politely asks Harold to take good care of her during the tour. Meanwhile, Kazuki becomes both furious and stressed because he realizes that he no longer has any way to avoid getting involved with Erica anymore. The next scene shifts to a few days earlier in the Sumaragi estate, where Tasuku is discussing the letter sent by Harold with a man named Kiryu. Tasuku asks Kiryu what he thinks about the contents of the letter. Kiryu replies that he finds the entire thing suspicious because Harold openly revealed information about the weakness of the disease without showing any hesitation at all. Tasuku agrees with that opinion. He also says that the letter strangely gives the feeling that the Stokes family may already be starting to decline from within. Because of that, Kiryu begins wondering if there might actually be someone else secretly controlling the situation behind the scenes. He says that he simply cannot believe a boy like Harold could have written such a letter completely on his own. Hearing that, Tasuku calmly says that Harold may only be acting as a messenger at best. That thought immediately leads them to another important question: who actually wrote the letter? Tasuku points out that if the sender truly wanted to help the Sumaragi family, then there should have been easier and safer ways to do it. Because of that, Kiryu eventually comes to the conclusion that perhaps someone is trying to damage the Stokes family from the inside. Tasuku agrees with that possibility and says it could even be someone very close to the Stokes family itself. Such a person might be secretly manipulating Harold for their own purposes, almost as if they had complete control over him. However, Tasuku soon considers another possibility as well. Maybe the entire thing is simply a test aimed at the Sumaragi family. Even after discussing all those possibilities and carefully thinking about the risks and rewards involved, both of them finally reach the same conclusion. There is still a strong chance that the information written inside the letter is real. Because of that, Tasuku immediately orders Kiryu to prepare everything necessary for creating the medicine. He also says that they will only use it on volunteers after fully explaining all the possible risks involved. Kiryu respectfully agrees to the order. The scene then shifts back to the present time at the Stokes mansion, where everyone is sitting together at the dining table. Hayden happily tells Erica to enjoy herself as much as possible during her stay. Erica politely responds with an okay. While watching the conversation, Kazuki grows increasingly frustrated and starts thinking deeply about the situation. Seeing his expression, Jessica asks him if something is wrong. Kazuki quickly replies that nothing is wrong with him at all. Hearing that, Jessica suddenly begins pampering him affectionately in front of everyone, which completely surprises both Erica and Yuno. Kazuki immediately gets embarrassed and angrily tells Jessica to stop doing things like that in front of guests. In response, both Hayden and Jessica start laughing, saying that Harold has always been shy since childhood. Hearing that only makes Kazuki even more irritated, and he loudly asks why the two of them are acting as if he is the only one being embarrassed here. According to him, they should feel embarrassed, too. At the same time, Erica quietly notices that many of the servants are secretly staring at her. Meanwhile, Kazuki becomes even more annoyed because nobody seems to be paying attention to what he actually wants. Unable to tolerate it any longer, he hurriedly finishes his meal because he simply wants to leave the place as fast as possible. After dinner ends, everyone returns to their own rooms. Inside her room, Yuno asks Erica if Harold does not seem like a rather rebellious boy. Erica quietly agrees and explains that her father also warned her that there was a chance Harold might be connected to a traitor or perhaps being manipulated by someone behind the scenes. Even so, Yuno says that Harold's personality does not feel like someone who would obediently follow another person's orders. She also points out that even when Erica purposely tried to test him earlier, nothing suspicious was revealed in the end. Erica agrees with her, but she also says that unless they discover Harold's true intentions, the danger surrounding the Sumaragi family will never disappear completely. Seeing Erica looking worried, Yuno walks closer and gently tells her not to stress herself too much. She reminds Erica that this is exactly why she came along with her to the Stokes estate. Erica still warns Yuno to be careful. However, Yuno simply smiles and proudly says that she is basically a detective, so secret investigations are her specialty. Because of that, Erica does not need to worry about her at all. Afterward, Erica finally goes to sleep, while Yuno stays awake and continues thinking about Harold by herself. She wonders whether Harold's strange behavior is truly just an act connected to some hidden traitor. If that is the case, then there should have been some kind of suspicious movement from him already. Yuno also remembers Tasuku's instructions. He had told Erica to deliberately pressure Harold during the daytime whenever nobody else was around, hoping to shake him mentally and reveal something suspicious. However, none of those attempts produced any useful results. Because of that, Yuno starts believing more strongly that Harold may actually be getting used like a puppet by someone else. Still, she feels that the idea of Harold being hypnotized seems very unlikely. As she continues thinking deeply about the situation, Yuno quietly wonders if there might be another hidden truth behind everything. Finally, she mutters that if things really are this complicated, then uncovering the truth will require much more effort than expected. While saying that, Yuno slowly takes out a small hidden weapon from her sleeve. The scene makes it clear that she is preparing to use much harsher methods against Kazuki in order to force information out of him. The next morning, Yuno begins talking with the villagers around the town to gather information about the Stokes family. During those conversations, she learns that the Stokes family is feared by many people because they rarely treat ordinary villagers like humans. According to the townspeople, the family treats them more like tools and takes away most of their earnings through heavy taxes. However, the thing that shocks Yuno the most is hearing the rumor that Harold personally killed Clara. After hearing that story, Yuno asks once again if it might just be a misunderstanding or false rumor. The villager replies that he does not know the full truth himself because he never witnessed it personally. He only heard the story from people who regularly visit the Stokes estate. After that, the scene shifts to the busy town filled with noise and movement everywhere. Following Hayden's orders, Kazuki has brought Erica out to tour the territory. However, Erica looks unusually quiet and sad during the entire trip. Meanwhile, Kazuki is secretly asking Norman for guidance because he himself knows very little about the Stokes territory. The original game barely contained any detailed information about the area at all. With Norman's quiet help, Kazuki somehow manages to stop in front of a store and tells the shopkeeper to prepare suitable items for the girl standing beside him. He also says that a messenger will later arrive to deliver the payment. The store owner quickly agrees and respectfully begins gathering items for Erica. Even so, Kazuki can already tell from Erica's expression that she has started quietly hating him more and more. Although she never directly mentions the rumors about Clara's death, it is clear that she no longer fully trusts him either. Kazuki already knows why. Some of his own soldiers informed him that rumors about Harold killing Clara had started spreading among the people, meaning Erica most likely heard about it as well. After buying the gifts for her, Kazuki simply tells Erica that they should return home now. Meanwhile, Yuno secretly follows behind them from a distance while carefully watching everything without being noticed. After returning to the mansion, Kazuki immediately heads toward Norman and Jake to hear the latest updates about the LP farming project. Jake reports that all 6 testing locations are showing favorable growth and that the harvest results are progressing exactly as expected. Hearing that makes Kazuki happy, and he immediately says that he wants to expand the operation as quickly as possible. However, Norman points out a serious problem with that idea. He explains that if they increase the scale too quickly, they will eventually run out of manpower. On top of that, without proper supervision, some farmers may start acting only for their own benefit instead of following the agreed system fairly. Since Kazuki cannot solve the manpower problem immediately, he asks if there is anyone else they could use for assistance. Norman replies that it would be difficult. Although they might temporarily use people from other sections as inspectors, it would not be realistic to send them directly to the farms because they already have important duties of their own. Kazuki then asks Norman whether hiring workers from outside the territory could become an option. Just as the two continue discussing the matter, Jake interrupts them and says that he still has not finished his report yet. Realizing that the remaining information may be important, Kazuki immediately tells him to continue. Jake then explains that the soil used in the experimental farms has shown no harmful effects from the life potions at all. Furthermore, the people testing the crops have not shown any unusual symptoms either. Hearing this makes Kazuki feel relieved. Although it is not a perfect conclusion yet, he believes the results are promising enough. Still, he decides that they should continue growing more samples and observing the long-term results before making a final judgment. The scene then shifts back toward Erica and Yuno. After returning to the room, Yuno notices that Erica looks even more worried than before. Yuno begins explaining that she learned the Stokes family truly does not care much about ordinary people at all. Hearing that makes Erica realize that the strange looks from the servants during dinner were probably filled with pity because she was Harold's fiancée. The two continue discussing the matter for a while until Yuno finally mentions that one particular story caught her attention. Erica curiously asks what it was. Yuno then reveals the rumor she heard about, that Harold once used magic to burn a servant and her family into ashes. Hearing that completely shocks Erica. She immediately asks if the story is really true or if it could simply be slander spread by someone else. Yuno replies that she cannot confirm the truth completely, but since she heard nearly identical stories from multiple servants, it likely is not just a simple rumor anymore. Erica slowly becomes more frightened after hearing that. Up until now, she believed that although Harold often insulted weak people and acted harshly, he still gave the Sumaragi family hope by helping save their citizens. Because of that, she started thinking that perhaps Harold was different from the rest of the Stokes family after all. However, after hearing these new rumors, she no longer knows what to believe. Seeing Erica trembling in fear, Yuno gently tells her not to worry. She promises that she will continue secretly investigating Harold herself. Until then, she strongly advises Erica to avoid being alone with him whenever possible. Erica quietly agrees while still shaking nervously. Yuno then moves closer to comfort her and softly says that everything will be all right because she is there to protect her. Meanwhile, on the other side of the mansion, Kazuki is also thinking to himself that the LP farming project seems stable for now, so things should remain fine for the time being. In the next scene, some servants inside the Stokes mansion are talking among themselves about Erica. They mention that she has not looked very well ever since the day she went out with Harold Sama. Since then, nearly 2 weeks have already passed, which makes the servants even more worried about her condition. Meanwhile, the scene shifts toward Kazuki, who is currently deep inside the forest practicing his swordsmanship. He specifically chose the same forest that he once used during Clara's rescue because nobody usually comes there. That way, he can freely train without anyone watching him. Kazuki swings his sword with full force and releases a swift lightning attack through the blade. The strike creates a huge impact throughout the surrounding area, shaking the nearby trees and ground. Even after seeing such power, Kazuki still looks dissatisfied. In reality, his magic is already incredibly strong, but he feels frustrated because it is still nowhere close to the level of Harold from the original story. Considering how powerful Harold was in the game, Kazuki believes he should naturally be capable of far more than this. Because of that, he continues practicing while trying to push his limits further. At the same time, Yuno is secretly watching him from a distance while hiding behind a tree. The moment she witnesses his attack, she becomes completely shocked because what she just saw was far more dangerous than she expected. Harold was not only skilled with the sword, but he could even combine swordsmanship with magic techniques flawlessly. After seeing that terrifying display of strength, Yuno immediately realizes how much of a threat he truly is. She starts thinking that confronting him directly would be extremely dangerous. Even if she tried to attack him, there is a high chance that she would not survive his strikes unharmed. Because of that, Yuno quickly understands that her hidden weapons would stand no chance against someone with power like his. Deciding that staying there any longer is too risky, she quietly prepares to leave the area before being noticed. However, just as she tries to move away, a sword suddenly flies toward her at incredible speed and pierces directly into the tree she is hiding behind. Yuno freezes in shock. At the same moment, Kazuki sharply turns toward her direction and loudly shouts, asking who is hiding there and ordering the person to come out immediately instead of sneaking around. Yuno is now caught in a dilemma as she wonders what she should do next. For a moment, she thinks about running away, but she quickly gives up on that idea because Harold may have already completely seen through her spying actions. If he possesses such sharp awareness at only 10 years old, then there must be far more hidden within him than she first imagined. Because of that, Yuno decides that the only option left is to step out and face him directly. On the other side, Kazuki is completely shocked himself because the sword actually slipped out of his hand by accident. However, because of that mistake, he somehow managed to expose the person secretly spying on him. Still, Kazuki honestly believes that the person hiding would never come out so easily. More importantly, he starts worrying that the sword may have injured whoever was hiding there, which is why they are not moving at all. Suddenly, to his complete surprise, Yuno slowly steps out from behind the tree. Kazuki becomes fully stunned the moment he sees her. Yuno politely apologizes for secretly watching him. Hearing that only confuses Kazuki even more because he cannot understand why someone like her would be interested in watching a kid practicing swordsmanship alone in the forest. At the same time, Kazuki feels relieved after realizing that she was not hurt by the sword. Deep inside, he simply wants to calmly warn her to be more careful next time because she could seriously get injured doing something reckless like that. Unfortunately, Harold's mouth once again speaks differently from what Kazuki truly wants to say. Instead, he coldly shouts that she should stop sneaking around in the shadows, because if she forgets her place, she may end up getting severely injured someday. Yuno smiles and apologizes once again, but deep down, she interprets his words as a clear warning. To her, it sounds like Harold is telling her there will not be a second chance if she continues investigating him any further. Now Yuno becomes even more troubled about what she should do next. Harold noticed her presence so easily that she starts doubting whether she could truly protect Erica from someone with such overwhelming ability. On top of that, every word Harold said carried hidden meanings that made him seem both powerful and extremely dangerous. However, one thing becomes completely certain in Yuno's mind now. There is no way Harold could simply be a helpless puppet controlled by someone else. Because of all those thoughts, Yuno quietly stands in front of Kazuki without saying anything for a while. Kazuki then suddenly asks her what exactly is going on with Erica lately. Yuno replies that Erica still does not seem to be feeling very well, and that perhaps she is struggling because of the unfamiliar environment at the Stokes estate. Hearing that, Kazuki gives a small smile and asks why the two of them do not simply return back to their own home instead. Yuno looks slightly hurt after hearing those words and asks why he speaks so coldly. She tells him that he should show Erica a little more kindness since she is his fiancée after all. Kazuki immediately shouts that such thinking is completely foolish. However, deep inside, he also knows that he cannot truly speak kindly even if he wants to because Harold's mouth never allows him to express his real feelings properly. Because of that, he coldly says that he has no intention of being tied down by something like a temporary relationship. The moment Yuno hears the words temporary relationship, she becomes confused and asks what exactly he means by that. Kazuki instantly realizes he made a mistake because he does not want anyone discovering that he is actually considering canceling the engagement in the future. To avoid revealing anything further, he loudly says that he has no obligation to explain himself to someone like her and immediately walks away from the area. After leaving, Kazuki starts thinking deeply about Erica's recent behavior. He knows that Erica was never supposed to be a girl with a weak body or fragile health. Because of that, he begins wondering if this strange situation could somehow be connected to another hidden death flag that he never learned about in the original story. The scene then shifts toward Erica, who is quietly staring up at the clouds outside. She looks extremely sad, and there is a strange expression on her face as she silently remains lost in her thoughts. After Kazuki returns to the mansion, he suddenly remembers that he left his sword behind in the forest. Realizing that Yuno would definitely not go retrieve it for him, he quickly hurries back outside to get it himself. However, while heading there, he notices Erica standing alone in silence. Seeing her there makes Kazuki wonder whether it is really all right for her to be wandering around in her condition. The moment Erica notices him, she suddenly becomes frightened, which only makes Kazuki feel even more confused and uneasy about her behavior lately. Because of that, Kazuki decides to try convincing her to return to her room and rest properly. He walks toward her, intending to simply ask if she is feeling all right. However, before he can say what he truly wants, Harold's mouth once again twists his words completely. Instead, he coldly says that someone who became bedridden because of poor health should not wander around carelessly like an idiot who cannot even take care of herself properly. He then harshly tells her to hurry back to her room immediately. The moment those words leave his mouth, Kazuki becomes furious with himself again. He cannot understand how such simple thoughts inside his head always become cruel and insulting the moment he speaks. To Kazuki's surprise, Erica does not reply at all. Seeing her remain silent, he tries speaking to her once again, but she still says nothing. Eventually, Kazuki starts thinking that maybe she simply dislikes being around him. Because of that, he decides to leave so she can calm down and return to her room by herself. However, the moment Kazuki turns around to walk away while muttering that he cannot care about someone who does not care about herself either, Erica suddenly asks him to stop. She quietly says that there is something she wants to ask him. Kazuki responds by impatiently telling her that she should learn to speak faster if she has something to say. Erica then nervously asks him if the rumor she heard is true. The rumor claiming that he used magic to burn a servant and her daughter to death. Kazuki never intended to hide the truth from anyone, so without hesitating, he immediately answers her. At first, Erica becomes slightly relieved because his tone almost sounds calm. However, in the very next moment, Kazuki's mouth suddenly twists his words again. With a cruel laugh that even shocks Kazuki himself, Harold's voice declares that he killed both the servant and her daughter. He then coldly adds that no matter how many weak people die, it means nothing if nobody remembers them in some heroic story afterward. Erica looks completely shocked and asks how he could do something so horrible to innocent people without any real reason at all. Kazuki coldly responds that Clara simply irritated him, so he decided to deal with her however he wanted. According to him, whether he spares someone or kills them is entirely his own choice. Harold's mouth continues speaking cruelly, even boasting that keeping Clara's daughter alive alone in the world would have been far more troublesome. Because of that, he claims that killing both of them together was actually an act of mercy. Hearing those words, Erica quietly asks him to stop talking. However, Kazuki's mouth refuses to stop and continues speaking in an even more heartless and mocking way. Finally, Erica loses control of her emotions. With tears forming in her eyes, she suddenly slaps him across the face without thinking. While crying, she angrily shouts that he is the worst person she has ever met in her entire life. After being slapped, Kazuki simply asks her what exactly she expects him to do about it now. Erica says nothing more after that. She quietly asks him to excuse her and immediately walks away from the place. Once she leaves, Kazuki slowly places his hand against his cheek and remains completely silent for a long time. The next scene then shifts toward Harold's room, where Zen happily arrives and asks whether Harold has been training again. Zen cheerfully says that he simply wanted to come and spend some time hanging out with him. However, Kazuki gives absolutely no response at all. Seeing his unusual silence, Zen becomes nervous and carefully asks what happened and whether something is wrong. Suddenly, Kazuki loudly shouts at him to leave him alone for the entire day. Even when Zen tries asking for the reason, Kazuki refuses to answer and immediately throws him out of the room. After shutting the door, Kazuki slowly sits down against it and starts thinking deeply about everything that just happened. He realizes that his constant harsh words and insults finally pushed even Erica to the point where she became furious enough to slap him. Still, Kazuki quickly forces himself to calm down. He tells himself that this is not the time to become shaken by something like that. If he cannot even endure emotional pain like this, then surviving everything waiting for him in the future will become impossible. Because of that, he decides that he simply has to bear these feelings and keep moving forward no matter what. The next morning, when Kazuki finally wakes up, he realizes that he overslept because it is already past noon. He quietly thinks that Erica's slap must have affected him far more deeply than he expected. In truth, Kazuki knows that if any fan of the original game had witnessed that scene, they probably would have felt satisfied seeing Harold get slapped like that. However, for Kazuki himself, experiencing it personally felt completely different. Instead of feeling angry, he was left with a strange pain in his heart that he could not properly explain. After thinking about it for a while, Kazuki decides to stop dwelling on it and head straight toward the dining room to eat something. While there, he calls for Norman because he wants to discuss an important matter. Once Norman arrives, he first asks about Kazuki's health and whether he is feeling all right. Kazuki replies that he is fine and only had some trouble sleeping the previous night. After that, he immediately brings up the topic of recruiting people from outside the territory, which they had discussed earlier. Hearing that, Norman happily asks if Kazuki has already come up with another brilliant idea. In response, Kazuki explains his new plan. He asks whether they could demonstrate the benefits of the LP farming method to wealthy merchants and then make contracts allowing those merchants to buy the rights to use it. According to Kazuki's idea, the merchants would later resell the farming method to ordinary farmers, the farmers would pay fees to the merchants for using it, and afterward the profits would be divided between the merchants and the original creators of the method. However, Kazuki also points out another important issue. If they truly want to secure talented workers and properly expand the project, they cannot expect much success without the support of a large company or organization backing them. After hearing the proposal, Norman asks whether Harold already knows of any major company they could rely on for support. Kazuki immediately replies that he does not. Instead, he says that he is currently only asking for opinions from Norman and Jake before deciding anything further. Norman says that he does not think merchants would suddenly pay attention to them just because of one unexpected proposal. He also explains that independent merchants are limited in number, making the situation even more difficult for them. Kazuki already knows that Hayden and Jessica probably have connections with large merchants and trading groups. However, he also knows that he absolutely cannot tell them anything about the LP farming method. Because of that, Kazuki decides to focus only on finding another way to gather trustworthy merchants without involving his parents at all. Later, when Kazuki is away from his room, Zen once again arrives at his door and asks him to open it. After getting no response for some time, Zen slowly opens the door himself, only to realize that nobody is inside the room. After leaving the room, Zen walks through the mansion while thinking that Harold probably went away for training again like usual. While wandering around, he notices Erica sitting quietly by herself, so he walks toward her and politely greets her. Erica greets him back, but then curiously asks who he is. Zen happily introduces himself and then asks whether she is not together with Yuno right now. Erica explains that Yuno went to town for some personal work. After hearing that, Zen asks why Erica is sitting there alone and whether she perhaps came looking for Harold. He then casually mentions that Harold is not currently inside his room. Erica quietly looks at him without saying anything. Since she remains silent, Zen continues talking cheerfully, saying that Harold-sama has been extremely busy lately and that he only hopes Harold does not end up overworking himself too much. Hearing Zen speak like that makes Erica look even more confused. Noticing her expression, Zen curiously asks what is wrong. Erica then quietly asks whether Zen truly does not know about the rumors claiming that Harold used magic to kill a servant. Zen quickly responds that he believes those are probably just rumors and that nothing was ever completely proven in the end. However, to Zen's shock, Erica reveals that Harold personally admitted it to her himself. She then sadly asks how Zen can continue following someone like Harold after hearing something so terrible. For a moment, Zen completely loses the words to answer her. Meanwhile, Erica lowers her head sadly and continues speaking. She says that she cannot understand how someone could kill innocent people so casually without even hesitating. She also admits that even though Harold is her fiancé and even though the engagement was necessary for protecting her family and her people, she still cannot accept him at all. No matter what happens, she feels that she will never be able to forgive someone who could do such cruel things. Zen first apologizes to Erica for suddenly appearing and speaking to her without warning. After saying that, he quietly starts walking away from the place. However, while leaving, Zen suddenly begins thinking deeply about everything that has happened between Harold and Erica. The more he thinks about it, the more he feels that the two of them are actually very similar to each other. Both of them are trying to protect others in their own ways, even though the methods they use are completely different. Zen also believes that both Harold and Erica possess kindness and strength deep inside themselves. Because of that, he feels that if they could truly understand each other honestly, then maybe they could support one another instead of continuing to misunderstand each other. Thinking all of this, Zen suddenly decides that he cannot simply leave things the way they are now. Without hesitating further, he turns back toward Erica and directly asks if she can come with him for a moment. Deep inside, Zen silently apologizes to Harold. He remembers Harold's warning about never revealing certain things to anyone. However, Zen also cannot ignore the fear growing inside him. The fear that one day Harold might completely break apart emotionally if nobody truly understands him. Because of that, Zen decides to help Harold in his own way without directly betraying the promise he made. In Zen's eyes, Erica is someone Harold desperately needs beside him right now, even if Harold himself does not realize it. With a serious expression, Zen pleads with Erica to come with him because there is something important that she absolutely needs to know. Seeing the determination in his eyes, Erica quietly agrees to follow him. Zen then leads her through the mansion and brings her directly toward Harold's room. Without hesitating, he opens the door and tells her to enter inside with him. The moment Erica steps inside, she immediately becomes nervous and asks whether it is really all right for them to enter someone's room without permission like this. Zen calmly replies that this room belongs to Harold-sama himself. Hearing that answer only shocks Erica even more, and she becomes confused about why exactly Zen brought her into Harold's personal room in the first place. After that, Zen hurriedly hides Erica inside a cupboard and quietly asks her to wait there without making any noise. Only a few seconds later, Kazuki suddenly enters the room, causing Zen to panic for a moment. The instant Kazuki notices him, he ferociously asks what exactly Zen is doing inside his room without permission. Trying to stay calm, Zen quickly makes up an excuse and says that nobody answered when he knocked, so he thought he would just take a quick look inside. Meanwhile, Erica, who is hiding inside the cupboard, becomes completely nervous. She realizes that she already missed her chance to escape from the room, and now she is completely trapped there. On top of that, she cannot understand what Zen is even trying to do anymore. In her mind, hiding a guest of the mansion inside a cupboard like this feels far too stressful and unreasonable. Back in the room, Zen tells Kazuki that he actually came because he has something important to discuss with him. Kazuki impatiently asks what it is. Zen then explains that the rumors about Harold killing Clara and her daughter are spreading throughout the entire territory. According to him, people everywhere keep asking questions about it. Still, despite hearing all those rumors, Zen says that he never revealed anything to anyone. However, Zen cannot understand one thing. He asks why Harold continues allowing his reputation to fall lower and lower without trying to stop the rumors or defend himself in any way. To Zen's surprise, Kazuki responds coldly that it does not matter to him at all. He says that after hearing Zen speak so seriously, he expected something far more important than just useless rumors that have already been spreading for quite some time. Zen still tries to say something else, but Kazuki suddenly becomes angry and sharply asks whether Zen wants him to publicly announce that Clara and Colette safely escaped to Bloche village and are both still alive. Hearing those words, Erica becomes completely stunned inside the cupboard. She can barely believe what she just heard. Meanwhile, Zen immediately starts apologizing and says that he would never reveal something like that to anyone, even if his own life depended on it. Kazuki then explains the situation further. He says that if Hayden and Jessica ever discover that Clara is still alive, they will immediately become suspicious of him. Because of that, he already decided long ago that he had to completely erase every possible chance of the truth being exposed. Zen quietly says that he understands. However, after thinking for a moment, he asks why Kazuki does not simply tell Erica the truth. According to him, Erica seems genuinely depressed because of those rumors. Without hesitation, Kazuki immediately rejects the idea and says that it is impossible. Zen curiously asks why not. Hearing that question, Kazuki silently starts thinking to himself, there is no way he can explain the real reason, that he is trying to avoid the death flags from the original story and make Erica hate him just like she did in the game. Because he cannot reveal any of that, Kazuki quickly comes up with another explanation instead. At the same time, he firmly warns Zen never to tell anyone about this conversation. Kazuki then says that Erica was crying earlier and he does not even know whether she cried because he supposedly killed someone or simply because a mother and daughter suffered such a cruel fate. Still, according to him, she continues shedding tears in sympathy for other people without hesitation. Because of that, Kazuki coldly calls her nothing more than a foolish girl. He further says that if someone like Erica continues staying beside him, then she will only continue getting hurt no matter what happens. After hearing those words, Zen slowly begins understanding what Kazuki truly means underneath all the harsh words. He quietly asks whether that is the reason Harold keeps pushing Erica away, because he is actually worried about her. Kazuki responds that it is for the sake of both of them. He says that he has no intention of marrying an irritating girl who cries over every little thing. Hearing that answer shocks Zen. He immediately asks whether that means Harold truly does not plan on marrying Erica in the future. Kazuki calmly replies with a simple no. Zen then asks why Kazuki does not simply refuse the engagement if he truly has no intention of marrying Erica. Kazuki replies that it is not that simple. He explains that the engagement itself was built upon money and political support, so rejecting it carelessly is impossible. A few years earlier, the miasma spread through the Sumaragi territory and badly damaged their forests and harvests, causing their economy to rapidly fall into decline. Because of that, the Sumaragi family desperately needed financial support from somewhere. On the other hand, Hayden, who is obsessed with strengthening the Stokes bloodline with noble connections, immediately accepted the chance to support the Sumaragi family without hesitation. After hearing that, Zen quietly asks that if Kazuki truly does not plan on marrying Erica, then would breaking the engagement not heavily damage the Sumaragi family again? Kazuki gives a small smile and says that he already prepared countermeasures for that situation long ago. He explains that he secretly sent a letter to Tasuku through Erica. Inside that letter, he included information for creating a medicine effective against the miasma. In addition to that, Kazuki also plans to eventually share the LP farming method with the Sumaragi family as well, allowing them to greatly improve their income and recover their territory's economy. Because of those two things, Mao, the medicine, and the LP farming method, Kazuki believes that the Sumaragi family will eventually be able to survive even without support from the Stokes family. That is why the broken engagement should not destroy them financially anymore. Listening to all of this from inside the cupboard, Erica feels more and more ashamed of herself. She realizes how terribly she misunderstood Kazuki all this time and how unfairly she judged him without knowing the truth. After the conversation finally ends, Kazuki firmly warns Zen once again not to reveal any of this information to anyone. He then suddenly adds that Zen should also start thinking seriously about his own hopeless future as well. Both Zen and Erica become stunned after hearing those unexpected words. Zen quickly asks what exactly Harold means by that. Kazuki calmly explains that the Stokes family is slowly heading toward ruin because of their own actions. According to him, if Hayden continues raising heavy taxes and wasting money recklessly like he does now, then even the LP farming method will not be enough to save the territory in the future. He says that eventually the damage will become impossible to stop because it is already heading toward an unavoidable collapse. Hearing this, Zen becomes shocked and asks what will happen to the people living in the Stokes territory if that day truly comes. At first, Kazuki quietly says that he does not know. However, after thinking for a moment, he softly adds that perhaps Tasuku will not allow something terrible to happen to the citizens when that time finally arrives. Erica becomes surprised the moment she hears Tasuku's name during the conversation. Even Zen looks confused and asks what exactly Harold is trying to say by bringing up the Sumaragi family again. Kazuki calmly explains that he already appealed to the Sumaragi family to protect the citizens of the Stokes territory fairly if the Stokes family ever collapses in the future. Since Tasuku has strong ties with the royal families, he would be able to act as a connection for receiving support and assistance. According to Kazuki, that would at least give the ordinary people a chance to survive even if the Stokes family falls apart one day. However, he coldly adds that if even that fails, then all he can do is laugh at the citizens for being too weak to survive on their own. Right after saying that, Kazuki suddenly turns ferocious and glares sharply at Zen. He warns him that if even a single word from this conversation leaks outside the room, then Zen will never see the light of day again. Zen immediately nods nervously and promises that he will never tell anyone about any of this. After that, Kazuki impatiently tells him to leave already if he has nothing else to say. However, before leaving, Zen suddenly asks what Kazuki plans on doing for the rest of the day. Kazuki instantly refuses to answer and harshly tells him that it is none of his business. Trying to make an excuse, Zen awkwardly says that he actually wanted to practice swordsmanship together today. That is why he was asking whether Harold planned on training with his sword again. Hearing that confuses Kazuki. First, Yuno secretly watched him training, and now even Zen suddenly wants to observe his swordsmanship as well. However, after thinking for a moment, Kazuki realizes this might actually become a good chance to improve the accuracy of his swift lightning attack. Because of that, he agrees and tells Zen to come with him. Before leaving the room, Kazuki grabs 2 swords instead of 1. Seeing that immediately makes Zen nervous, and he quickly asks why Harold is carrying an extra sword. Kazuki casually replies that he plans to make Zen move around and dodge his attacks during training so he can test his accuracy properly without accidentally killing him. The moment Zen hears that, he becomes terrified and almost starts crying while asking whether Harold seriously plans to use him as a living target. Kazuki angrily tells him to stop talking back and immediately drags him outside toward the forest for training. After both of them finally leave the room, Erica slowly steps out from inside the cupboard. She remains completely silent for a long time. Without saying anything, she quietly walks back toward her own room while continuously thinking about the words Kazuki said earlier. The words revealing that Clara and ActionToon safely escaped to another village and are both still alive. The moment she reaches her room, Erica hurriedly calls out Yuno's name. Yuno welcomes her back normally at first, but the moment she sees Erica's panicked expression, she immediately becomes shocked. Erica quickly walks toward her and urgently says that there is something she absolutely needs to confirm right away. Erica then shared everything with Yuno, including whatever she had heard inside Kazuki's room, and the two started talking as if all of it was actually true. Then the matter of the antibiotics also started making sense because it was impossible to create something like that in just 2 days. So it meant that Harold's had likely predicted Sumaragi's crisis beforehand, many years before the engagement was even decided. But even after doing all of that, Harold had nothing to gain from it, which made Erica question why he would do something like that in the first place. Yuno, on the other hand, was curious about something else. If Harold had the power to sense people nearby, then why did he allow Erica to hear their conversation? Was it done intentionally, or was there some other reason behind it? The more she thought about him, the more suspicious she became of him. The scene then shifted to 3 weeks later, where Kazuki was sitting alone while zoning out. He thought about how it had already been 3 weeks since he took the slap from Erica, and it had also been around 2 months since the girls moved into his mansion, so he started wondering when they were finally going back home. But soon, he decided not to think about it anymore because he already had too many other things to worry about. Just then, Norman arrived there, and seeing him, Kazuki asked what it was this time. Norman replied that Hayden had summoned him, so he needed to go and meet him. The scene then shifted to the moment when Kazuki met Hayden. Hayden explained that since Lady Erica had not been in good health lately, and because of Yuno's request, he was allowing Erica to return to the Sumaragi territory. Hearing that, Kazuki became really happy, thinking that he would no longer have to see that girl's face again. But to his shock, Hayden then added that Kazuki himself would escort Lady Erica back to the Sumaragi territory in order to deepen their relationship. Moreover, Kazuki would also have to stay there for some time. Hearing all of that, Kazuki felt like his mood had completely dropped, so he nervously asked why he even needed to do something like that. Hayden gave many excuses for it, and hearing them, Kazuki became furious while thinking about what he should do now. Hayden simply wanted to show the Sumaragi family that Erica and Kazuki were on good terms, but for Kazuki, this was terrible, because going there was like walking straight into a minefield. However, Kazuki soon realized that this could also become a chance for him to spread his LP farming method. By going to the Sumaragi territory, he could directly propose the idea to Tasuku himself. Maybe it could actually work, since his best card for turning Tasuku into an ally had already been played. After thinking everything through, Kazuki agreed with Hayden and said that he was ready to escort Erica back to her territory. Hayden became very happy after hearing that, and seeing his reaction, Kazuki realized once again just how naive Hayden really was. The scene then shifted toward Blosha Village, where Mac had gone to ask around about Clara. He stopped one person and asked whether they knew a woman named Clara Meller. It showed Clara happily doing her household chores while thinking that it had already been 5 months since she left the Stokes territory. Now, her life felt almost like a dream to her. Back then, on that day, she was supposed to be executed by the feudal lord, but the one who reached out to help her was none other than a boy who was only a year older than her daughter. She started thinking about Harold and wondering how he had been doing all this time. But soon, she decided not to think too much about it, because if she got involved with the Stokes family again, it might cause trouble not only for Harold, but also for her own family. Just then, a girl named Leona came there to greet Clara, and Clara greeted her back warmly. At this moment, it was revealed that Leona was Leonard's mother. Leona asked about Leonard, and Clara replied that he had gone with Khalid to buy some milk. The two then started talking about their children, and Leona happily mentioned that her son was helping others. She also said that it was good training for his body since he wanted to become a soldier in the chivalric order someday. After Leona left, Clara decided to prepare the cookies she had baked yesterday so that Leonard and Khalid could eat them once they returned home. Just then, Mac arrived there and asked if she was Clara Meller. Clara nodded in response, and hearing that, Mac directly asked whether she knew anything about a boy named Harold Stokes. The moment she heard Harold's name, Clara became tense. Mac then asked what she thought about the rumors claiming that Harold had murdered a servant. Hearing that, Clara became confused and started wondering who this man really was and why he was asking such questions. She even thought that he might have been sent by the Stokes family. So after thinking about all of that, she immediately denied knowing anything and asked him to leave. Mac quietly agreed without saying anything else and left from there. After he was gone, Clara started worrying about Harold and wondered what would happen to him if Hayden ever learned the truth. In the end, she simply thanked God for somehow continuing to protect Harold all this time. The scene then shifted to the Sumaragi territory, where Kazuki had arrived and was greeted by Tasuku. After welcoming him, Tasuku asked him to rest first, but Kazuki directly replied that he had something important to discuss. Because of that, Tasuku would need to make time in his schedule for him. While saying all this, Kazuki kept calling Tasuku a loser in his mind, so he started wondering if Harold only spoke politely whenever his parents were around. He even thought that his attitude must have annoyed Tasuku, but to his surprise, Tasuku calmly replied that he was currently busy and asked whether they could have the meeting tomorrow instead. Kazuki agreed, but he was still shocked that Tasuku did not get angry at all and remained just as calm and composed as he was in the original story. After Kazuki left, Yuno went to Tasuku and handed him her report regarding the Stokes family and Kazuki. Tasuku thanked Yuno for her hard work and told her that he would read it later. After saying that, Tasuku also left from there. Once he was gone, Yuno started thinking that even after doing so much investigation, she still had not been able to uncover any major clues. She had also been completely avoided by the 3 servants who frequently stayed in contact with Harold. At this point, it seemed like Harold was perfectly controlling the flow of information. According to the reports from her private investigators, Inspector Jake often visited the agricultural sector and especially the small group of independent farmers who were very close with each other. Because of that, infiltrating that area had become very difficult now. So she felt that she needed to continue investigating the matter for a little longer. Just then, Mac arrived there. Seeing him, Yuno became surprised that he had returned so quickly. So she directly asked whether he had found anything about Clara. Mac replied yes and informed her that a woman named Clara was currently living in Blosha Village. Yuno then asked if he had been able to meet her. Mac answered that he had, but he still could not learn the truth behind that incident because Clara acted as if she did not know Harold at all. Yuno listened carefully to everything he said and then told him that she believed it was finally time for her to visit Clara personally. After deciding that, she immediately prepared herself to go there. The next day, Kazuki was waiting for Tasuku inside the meeting hall, but Tasuku was running very late. So while waiting, Kazuki kept thinking about what would happen next. He was sure that Tasuku would want to obtain the LP farming method in order to overcome the economic crisis. After all, the miasma itself would be destroyed by the hero liner 8 years later. So if Kazuki could form an alliance with Tasuku before that, he would be able to support the hero liner, and it would also become easier for him to avoid his own death flag. Kazuki knew that the LP farming method still needed more testing before he could fully hand it over to Tasuku, because Tasuku would never take him seriously if he presented a technology that still had flaws and irregularities. However, Kazuki currently lacked enough people to help him, so increasing production was becoming difficult for him. If things continued like this, then he would eventually have to face the beginning of the original story 8 years later without Tasuku's support. But in order to avoid that outcome, Kazuki knew that he had to make a proposal here and somehow get Tasuku to accept it. Just then, Tasuku finally arrived and apologized for making Harold wait so long. After that, he thanked Kazuki for informing him about the antibiotics and even bowed in front of him while expressing his gratitude. Hearing that, Kazuki immediately told Tasuku to raise his head, saying that it wasn't good to show gratitude toward a loser like him. Tasuku replied that it could not be helped. He did not know what had convinced Harold, but it was an undeniable fact that things had started improving because of him. Kazuki wanted to stop saying nonsense, but because he still had Harold's mouth and personality to deal with, he could not help blurting out rude things again and again. In the end, he arrogantly told Tasuku to wag his tail like a dog and work together with him. Tasuku calmly asked if that was the reason Harold had requested a meeting with him. If so, then he should get straight to the point. Kazuki agreed and handed a report over to Tasuku. Tasuku took the report and noticed the title written on it, LP Farming Method. It contained the trial results of crops grown using the healing medicine known as the Life Potion. The moment Tasuku saw the graphs and numbers, he became completely stunned. The yield of every crop was several times greater than what traditional farming methods could produce. Tasuku admitted that the report was simply unbelievable. Kazuki casually replied that maybe it sounded unbelievable, but everything written there was true. Tasuku was surprised that Harold had already expected him to doubt it. Kazuki then proudly asked Tasuku to admit that the report truly sounded impossible to believe. Tasuku apologized and admitted that he could not help feeling suspicious because the contents were honestly shocking enough to make anyone question them further. However, since Harold was also the one who had provided the manufacturing method for the antibiotics, Tasuku felt that it would be rude to doubt him too much. Kazuki then told Tasuku that he was free to ask anything he wanted. Hearing that, Tasuku directly asked whether Harold understood how profitable this information already was, even without fully using the data himself. Kazuki simply replied that Tasuku could keep it since it was only a manuscript anyway. Hearing that, Tasuku realized that Harold was truly just as Yuno had described in her reports. Harold was not someone who could become another person's puppet, because he thought and acted on his own. So, the idea of controlling someone like him through simple teachings was complete nonsense. Moreover, the kind of attitude Harold was showing in front of him was honestly hard to understand. Tasuku wanted to end the conversation there, but if the Sumaragi family could successfully develop the LP farming method by using the manuscript, then they would gain massive profits almost for free. Still, he could not understand why Harold was leaving the initiative to him instead of pushing the discussion himself. Tasuku realized that there had to be something more behind all of this, so he started wondering what Harold's real goal actually was. But before anything else, he decided that he first needed to stop any possibility that could harm the Sumaragi family. Because of that, he chose to hear Harold out and carefully figure out his true intentions. Tasuku then said that he wanted to hear Harold's request. Hearing that, Kazuki replied that if Tasuku had not said those words, then this conversation would never have continued. Tasuku firmly asked what exactly Harold meant by that. Kazuki responded by saying that if the contents of the report were all true, then what would a loser like him choose to do with such a thing? Tasuku answered that it was clearly a groundbreaking invention, so first he would test it properly, and if the results turned out good without causing any problems, then he would begin production inside his territory. After securing stability and dominance there, he would gradually spread it across the country. Hearing that, Kazuki immediately asked whether Tasuku did not want to monopolize it for himself. Tasuku denied the idea at once, explaining that if he tried doing something like that, it would quickly become a reason for war. Chasing quick profit carelessly would only create unnecessary enemies. Kazuki smiled after hearing that and said that Tasuku had passed the test. because his opinion was basically the same as his own. That was exactly why he had come to make this proposal to him in the first place. Tasuku then asked what the proposal was. Kazuki pointed his finger toward Tasuku and declared that he was going to make a loser like him the joint developer of the LP farming method. Tasuku was completely shocked because he had never been involved in the development of the LP farming method at all. But to his even greater surprise, Harold told him that when the LP farming method would finally be spread, they would do it through the Sumaragi family. The very first question that came to Tasuku's mind was why Harold was not choosing the Stokes family instead. Suddenly, Tasuku realized something and started wondering if Harold had actually been hiding his true abilities from his own parents all this time. The more he thought about it, the more possible it seemed. If Hayden had known about something this important, then he definitely would have bragged about it during the engagement meeting. But the details about the declining condition of the Stokes family, along with the contents written inside Harold's letter, made the possibility feel very real. Tasuku then asked if Harold believed that it would be a bad idea to let his parents learn about the LP farming method. Kazuki replied that since Tasuku already understood his parents' personalities, then he should know that they would definitely try to monopolize it if they found out. On top of that, Kazuki himself lacked enough farmland, so he needed the support and manpower of someone else. Tasuku thought carefully about everything before asking why Harold had specifically come to him. After all, seeing such huge profits, almost anyone would have jumped at the opportunity immediately. Kazuki originally wanted to say that Tasuku was the most capable person for the job, but because he was still speaking through Harold's rude personality, the words that came out were completely different. He bluntly stated that Tasuku was simply the easiest loser to deal with. If Tasuku had rejected the proposal, then he would have just approached a second or even a third candidate instead. However, Kazuki also added that he already knew such a thing would not be necessary. Hearing that, Tasuku asked if Harold was implying that he would definitely accept the proposal. Kazuki confidently replied yes, because a loser like him would never be able to refuse it. Tasuku was genuinely surprised because he had never imagined Harold would take such a bold and forceful attitude while speaking to him. But, while thinking about Harold's strange behavior, Tasuku suddenly remembered certain lines written in the earlier letter regarding the antibiotics and the defensive line against the miasma. The moment that realization hit him, Tasuku's facial expression immediately changed. Seeing that reaction, Kazuki became pleased and asked whether Tasuku had finally realized the true motive behind all of this. The next scene showed the moment when Tasuku was rereading the letters Kazuki had previously sent him. In the letter, Harold had written that it must have been extremely painful for Tasuku to sacrifice his own daughter just to receive economic support. However, the Stokes family was also forcing heavy taxes on the people while wasting money on luxurious spending. So even they would eventually face rebellion from their citizens. Because of that, Harold wanted to present the Sumaragi family with a path that could save Erica's future. First, they needed to synthesize the medicine described on the separate page and use it on the patient. Second, they had to establish a defensive line around the area most heavily contaminated by the miasma. Third, within a few days, Harold would provide the Sumaragi family with an industrial technique that could restore their economy. If all of this succeeded, then the Sumaragi family would be able to rebuild their territory without depending on outside support anymore. In exchange for these three conditions, Tasuku only needed to break off Erica Sumaragi's engagement. Back in the present, Tasuku finally realized that the LP farming method was the industrial technique Harold had mentioned in that letter. Because of that, he directly asked whether Harold had already planned all of this from the very beginning. Kazuki proudly boasted about it and asked if that realization would change Tasuku's answer in any way. Tasuku replied that it would not, but he still wanted to know why Harold was going so far to help the Sumaragi family. Kazuki answered that even if he explained it, nobody besides himself would truly understand it anyway. Then, without thinking much more about it, he bluntly stated that if Tasuku could not trust him, then there was no point continuing the discussion. Tasuku was surprised that even after everything, Harold was still leaving the final decision entirely to him. If he accepted the proposal, then the Sumaragi family, its citizens, and Erica's future could all be saved. But even if he refused, the Sumaragi family would still continue receiving support from the Stokes family. In the end, the only person who would truly lose after all this effort was Harold himself. That was the part Tasuku could not understand. Why was Harold presenting this like a negotiation when the Sumaragi family practically had nothing to lose from it? It was difficult to believe that a 10-year-old boy could think this far ahead. Without overthinking any longer, Tasuku finally accepted the proposal directly. Hearing that, Kazuki praised him for making such a quick decision. He then told Tasuku to gather all the people working under his support. Moreover, Kazuki explained that a few years later, they would also need a company with a wide reach and a trustworthy place capable of keeping secrets safely, so he would leave that matter for Tasuku to handle in the future. From those words alone, Tasuku understood the full plan. Once their foundation became stable, they would cooperate with a company to increase the number of fields under their control and then use that company to spread the farming technique across the market. Kazuki then praised Tasuku for having a far better brain than the useless pawns around him. After that, Tasuku asked whether there was anything else Harold needed from him. Kazuki thought about it for a moment before saying that he needed someone to help him with combat training because he wanted to gain as much battle experience as possible. In the next scene, Kazuki was shown relaxing in the hot spring while taking a bath. As he enjoyed himself, he thought that this was one of the best things about the Sumaragi territory, because there was nothing like this back in the Stokes territory. While Kazuki was peacefully enjoying the bath, the scene shifted to the other side, where Yuno was sitting in front of the Sumaragi family. Tasuku asked what she wanted to report, since she had said earlier that she had something important to tell them. Yuno nodded and explained that, following Erica's orders, she had been investigating Harold for a long time. Hearing that, Tasuku became surprised and asked why she had been investigating Harold in the first place. Erica apologized and explained that there was something she absolutely needed to confirm no matter what. Tasuku then asked what it was, and Erica replied that he should already know about the rumors claiming that Harold had murdered a servant and her child. However, there was a possibility that those rumors were actually false. Tasuku was shocked to hear that and immediately asked if it was possible that both the mother and the child were still alive. Erica replied that she had ordered Yuno and her team to verify the truth, so Yuno would explain the details herself. Yuno then reported that the rumors spreading around had turned out to be false. The mother and child were currently living in a place called Blosha Village, which was under the control of another noble family. However, the problem was that Clara had refused to talk about the incident when Mac visited her earlier. Because of that, Yuno personally went to meet Clara herself. But even then, things did not become easier. The scene then showed the moment when Yuno visited Clara. After Yuno called out to her, Clara came outside, and Yuno immediately explained that she wanted to ask about something related to Harold. The moment Clara heard Harold's name, she immediately remembered Mac and asked if he was connected to Yuno. Yuno answered yes, and explained that Mac was her subordinate. She then directly revealed that Erica, the daughter of the Sumaragi family, was preparing to marry Harold, but because of the suspicions surrounding the murder rumors, the Sumaragi family had started opposing the marriage. Hearing that, Clara suddenly shouted that Harold-sama was not responsible, but she quickly stopped herself midway. Yuno then gently spoke up and said that she also believed Harold was not that kind of person. After all, the woman who was supposedly murdered was standing alive right in front of her. However, the real issue was that Harold himself was silently accepting those rumors without defending himself. Yuno continued by saying that if Harold kept pretending nothing was wrong, then he must have been carrying an unbearable burden in secret all this time. Because of that, she had no intention of exposing the hidden truth publicly. However, if Clara helped reveal the truth quietly, then they would be able to gather supporters for Harold in secret. Hearing that she might actually have a chance to help save Harold, Clara fell into deep conflict. She believed Harold was suffering because of her existence. Unable to hold herself together anymore, she broke down, fell to the ground, and started crying. Seeing that, Yuno quickly approached her and softly told her that she understood why Clara was hesitant to reveal the truth. But even if it ended up hurting her, she still needed to do whatever she could for Harold and Erica's sake. Hearing those words, Clara started focusing on the idea of what she herself could do to help. Finally, she made up her mind and asked Yuno to come inside the house, because it was not something she could explain while standing outside. If she had only continued living while being protected by Harold, then now it was finally her turn to do whatever she could to help the man who had saved her life. The scene then returned to the present, where Yuno continued explaining that everything had started when Clara accidentally injured Harold. After Clara was sentenced to execution, Harold lied to Hayden and claimed that he would use her as a test subject for his magic experiments and keep her locked inside the dungeon. After that, Harold secretly spent his time creating a way for Clara and her daughter to escape safely. In the end, he successfully helped both of them escape and start a new life. Harold had even personally provided them with household supplies and money for relocation. So based on everything they had learned, it seemed that Harold had willingly chosen to carry the stigma of being called a murderer because he wanted to keep Clara and her daughter's escape hidden from his own family in order to protect them. The moment Yuno finished explaining everything, Erica suddenly stood up and started walking away. Seeing that, Tasuku quickly asked where she was going. Erica replied that she wanted to apologize to Harold. She admitted that she knew nothing about the truth, yet she never even tried to learn it, and instead only took out her emotions on him. She had even raised her hand against him. So even if Harold never forgave her, she still felt that she needed to apologize. Tasuku immediately stopped her and firmly said that he could not allow her to do that. If Harold had gone this far just to protect Clara and her daughter, then the least they should do now was carefully protect his secret instead of exposing it. Because if Harold ever learned that the truth had leaked out, then he might distance himself from everyone even more than he already had. Hearing that only made Erica feel even worse, and she looked completely heartbroken. Tasuku walked closer to her and gently patted her head while saying that he understood how she felt. However, he also pointed out that apologizing right now would only comfort Erica herself. Hearing that, Erica shouted that she truly did not know what she was supposed to do anymore. If she could not correct her mistake and properly bow her head before him, then what else could she possibly do? Tasuku then calmly replied that she could become Harold's supporter instead. Harold might be extremely brilliant, but he was also a little too brilliant for his own good. Sometimes, a person who keeps carrying everything alone ends up isolating himself from everyone else. That was why, if Erica truly wanted to make up for her actions, then instead of simply apologizing, she should try getting closer to him and supporting him from now on. Tasuku then continued by saying that whatever Harold was trying to achieve, Erica needed to become someone who could truly understand him. Hearing those words, Erica quietly wondered how she was even supposed to do that. However, Tasuku also explained that because of Harold's brilliance, he only needed allies and not friends. So even if someone like Erica, who was his fiancée, devoted herself completely to him, Harold would probably still never open his heart to her. That was why, if Erica truly had the resolve to believe in and follow a man like him, then she needed to move forward now instead of hesitating. Erica remained completely silent after hearing all of that. Seeing this, Tasuku told her not to force herself to answer immediately. He said that she could think about everything carefully after spending more time close to Harold and understanding him better herself. However, he also added that she could still apologize for raising her hand against him. Erica quietly replied with an okay before leaving the room. After she was gone, Tasuku and Koyomi happily started talking about how much their daughter had grown. Tasuku believed that, knowing Erica's personality, her feelings toward Harold would only continue growing stronger from now on. The scene then shifted to the next day, where Tasuku had brought Kazuki to a certain place. Tasuku explained that it was the largest martial arts temple in the entire Sumaragi territory. Every day, people of all ages, from children to adults, trained there to improve their combat skills. Kazuki replied that everything was fine, but he still did not understand why Erica had come along with them. Tasuku answered that he had brought her because the people there kept insisting that she should come too. Kazuki still could not understand the reason behind it, but in the end, he decided not to think too deeply about it. After entering the temple, Kazuki was helped into the training clothes used there. Tasuku became surprised after seeing that Kazuki was able to wear them properly without any trouble or help from anyone else. Kazuki then told Tasuku to stop wasting time with unnecessary things and simply tell him where the opponent he was supposed to fight was. Hearing that, Tasuku smiled and called over someone named Itsuki. Itsuki looked like a young boy around 12 or 13 years old. However, just as Tasuku was about to introduce him, Itsuki completely ignored Tasuku and immediately rushed toward Erica before tightly hugging her. Itsuki happily started praising Erica while talking about how he had prepared many souvenirs for her. Seeing how fragile and overly energetic Itsuki looked, Kazuki immediately asked in disbelief if this person was seriously supposed to be his opponent. Tasuku agreed that Kazuki would naturally think that way, but he assured him that Itsuki's strength was absolutely real. Kazuki replied that no matter how much he looked at Itsuki, he still just looked like an ordinary kid. Hearing that, Itsuki immediately answered that the exact same thing could be said about Kazuki as well. Hearing the reply, Harold became slightly surprised. Itsuki then introduced himself properly as Itsuki Sumaragi, Erica's older brother. In response, Kazuki introduced himself as the son of the Stokes family. The moment he heard that, Itsuki suddenly moved closer to Kazuki and asked whether he was really the Harold who was engaged to Erica. While saying that, Itsuki tightly grabbed Kazuki's shoulder and stared at him angrily. Seeing Itsuki acting like that, both Tasuku and Erica immediately became tense. Meanwhile, Kazuki could actually feel pain from how strong Itsuki's grip was. As Kazuki started getting irritated, the people inside the temple also began talking among themselves after hearing that a duel was about to happen between Itsuki and Erica's fiancé. Because of that, many trainees quickly gathered around to watch Itsuki's swordsmanship. Itsuki then excitedly asked Kazuki if it was finally time for their duel. Kazuki actually wanted to tell him to let go of his shoulder first because the grip was hurting him, but because of Harold's rude way of speaking, he instead angrily shouted at Itsuki, warning him not to touch him so casually. Hearing that, Itsuki misunderstood completely and thought Harold had become fired up for the fight, so he happily told everyone to hurry and prepare the weapons. Turning around, Itsuki then asked for bamboo swords for both of them. Erica soon brought the bamboo swords over, and seeing her, Itsuki immediately started praising her again while proudly talking about how he would do his very best, so she should cheer for him properly. On the other side, Kazuki quickly realized that Itsuki was the annoying, energetic type of person. Because of that, he decided that he would need to fight him seriously. Itsuki then tossed a bamboo sword toward Kazuki. After catching it, Kazuki lightly swung it around a few times and felt how light it was. He wondered if it only felt that way because it was practically just a stick, or maybe because he had already become used to wielding an actual iron sword until now. Kazuki then looked around and noticed that the training area was slowly filling up with people. Realizing that they had all gathered as spectators, he turned his thoughts back toward Itsuki. Itsuki was originally just a character whose name had never even appeared in the original story. However, since Tasuku himself had chosen him, Tasuku must have been fully confident in Itsuki's skills. Even so, Kazuki still believed in Harold's abilities. Maybe Harold's speed and superior swordsmanship would allow him to overwhelm Itsuki completely, because those were the powers Harold's body would eventually possess in the future. Because of that, Kazuki convinced himself that there was no way he was going to lose. Just then, Erica began explaining the rules of the duel. They would only use bamboo swords, and attacks aimed at vital points were forbidden. The use of magic was also prohibited. There would be no time limit, and victory would be decided when one side either became unable to fight or surrendered. After hearing the rules, Tasuku asked both Itsuki and Kazuki if they had any problems with them. Itsuki calmly replied that he had none, while Kazuki loudly complained that Tasuku was being way too lenient about the fight. Tasuku agreed with Kazuki because he wanted to avoid any serious injuries at all costs. He explained that he would not have added such restrictions if both of them had been wearing proper protective gear. Actually, Kazuki also wanted to simply agree with the conditions without complaining, but because he was still stuck with Harold's rude way of speaking, he could not say it properly. Still, he felt relieved when Itsuki accepted all the conditions without any issue. Deep down, Itsuki thought that his father's restrictions were natural. After all, he had already fought against many adults before. Because of that, he knew there was a real chance that he might seriously injure Harold during the duel. Since Harold was a young noble heir, causing him harm could easily create unnecessary trouble. Thinking all of that, Itsuki then told Harold that he would even give him a handicap. Harold could make the first move, so he should go ahead and use his strongest attack. Tasuku then asked both of them to prepare themselves. The moment the match started, Kazuki immediately rushed toward Itsuki at full speed. Seeing that sudden movement, Itsuki became completely shocked. In the very next moment, Itsuki's bamboo sword was sent flying out of his hand. Everyone watching was left speechless. Even the spectators could not understand what had just happened. Kazuki then calmly told Itsuki that if this had been a real fight, he would already be dead by now. So Itsuki should be grateful that Kazuki still was not fighting seriously yet. Itsuki first praised Kazuki for being strong and admitted that he had underestimated him. But deep inside, he was honestly stunned. He could not believe that Harold had perfectly matched his stance and even changed the trajectory of his sword attack. Harold could have directly struck him at that moment, yet he deliberately chose only to knock away the bamboo sword instead. At that moment, Itsuki realized what Harold had truly been searching for by coming to a place like this. Harold was also someone looking for a rival against whom he could fight with his full strength. Itsuki then sincerely apologized to Kazuki and asked if he wanted to have a serious match this time. Kazuki simply smiled and replied that he was ready. However, this time Itsuki declared that he would make the first attack instead, so Harold should prepare himself properly. Kazuki confidently replied that it was fine and told Itsuki to come at him fast enough if he wanted to keep up with him. The moment Itsuki was ready to attack, Tasuku called out his name worriedly. Hearing that, Itsuki briefly looked toward Tasuku as if silently telling him not to worry. He still intended to keep the promise his father had made, but at the same time, he was also going to fight Harold seriously. The instant Itsuki charged toward Kazuki, Kazuki became completely stunned because Itsuki was truly fast and far quicker than he had expected. Even so, Kazuki somehow managed to block the attack and fight back. However, Itsuki immediately pointed out that Harold had left himself completely open this time, and he continued attacking without giving Kazuki any chance to recover. At this point, Kazuki could only focus on defending himself. Seeing that, Itsuki smiled and thought that things were going exactly as he expected. He started wondering how long Harold could continue lasting while only blocking attacks. The spectators around them also began discussing the match. They commented that Itsuki had already started cornering Erica's fiancé. If Harold stopped relying on his speed, then his movements became simple and easy to predict. On top of that, he was trying to block every single attack directly, which was not a good fighting style at all. Because of that, many spectators felt that Harold's swordsmanship was no different from an amateur. Even if Erica's fiancé had greater speed, when it came to reading and predicting the opponent's movements, Itsuki was clearly far ahead of him, so everyone believed it was only a matter of time before Harold ran out of stamina, and Itsuki claimed an easy victory. Itsuki then shouted and asked what was wrong with him. Harold replied that Itsuki himself seemed to be having trouble breathing instead. Itsuki answered that the same could be said for Harold as well. Right after saying that, Itsuki moved in for what he believed would be the final attack. Just as Kazuki was about to fall back, Itsuki swung forward to land the finishing blow. However, to Itsuki's complete surprise, Kazuki suddenly threw away his bamboo sword right before the attack connected. Before Itsuki could even understand what was happening, Kazuki had already stepped forward and launched a heavy palm strike straight at him. By the time Itsuki realized it, it was already too late to dodge. The palm attack landed instantly and Itsuki was knocked down onto the ground. Tasuku immediately shouted for them to stop the match. Itsuki lay there in shock, unable to believe that he had lost to a kid 3 years younger than himself. At that moment, he realized that Harold was someone who could continue improving rapidly through actual combat experience. After calming down, Itsuki asked Harold if they could have another match sometime in the future. Kazuki agreed and confidently added that next time, he would not lose to him again. Hearing that, Itsuki became confused and asked what Harold was even talking about. Kazuki then bluntly asked if Itsuki was an idiot, because the rules had clearly stated from the very beginning that only bamboo swords could be used as weapons. Since his palm was not a sword, the attack technically did not break the rules at all. Hearing that, Itsuki suddenly burst into laughter. Kazuki immediately furiously asked what was so funny about that. Itsuki replied that it was nothing serious. He simply thought that the son of the Stokes family was surprisingly interesting. Hearing that, Kazuki angrily shouted, asking whether that was supposed to be sarcasm. If it was, then he threatened that he would rip Itsuki's tongue out. But deep down, Kazuki honestly just wanted to ask what exactly Itsuki even meant, because he himself could not understand any of it. Itsuki nervously told Harold not to say such terrifying things so casually. After that, he stood back up and quietly stared at Kazuki. In his mind, he started thinking that Harold might become both his rival and little brother-in-law in the future, which honestly did not sound too bad to him. Meanwhile, Kazuki became tense after noticing Itsuki staring at him like that, so he immediately started walking away from there. Itsuki quickly asked where Harold was going. Harold loudly replied that it was none of his business, but deep inside, Kazuki simply wanted to go for a walk and calm his mind down a little. Itsuki then realized that maybe he had teased his future brother-in-law a little too much. On the other hand, Kazuki was confused about why Itsuki was suddenly acting so friendly toward him when he himself had only shown hostility until now. At the same time, Kazuki also felt frustrated because he believed he had practically lost the match. In his own eyes, defeating a younger kid through a trick felt pathetic, but there was nothing else he could have done in that situation. As Kazuki kept walking, he suddenly noticed how beautiful the scenery around him was. However, what stood out the most was that there was not even a single commercial area nearby. Instead, the entire atmosphere strangely reminded him of Japan. At that moment, Kazuki started thinking about how it had already been 5 months since he was reborn into this world, yet the fate waiting for him 8 years later was still his destruction. He began wondering whether he would actually be able to survive safely until the protagonist of the game, Liner, finally cleared the story. And even if Liner defeated the final boss and saved the world, would he ever be able to return to his original world again? Those thoughts pushed Kazuki into deep confusion. He started wondering if he really had to spend his entire life living in this world as Harold. As those emotions overwhelmed him, Kazuki felt like everything had become too much to handle, and tears slowly started forming in his eyes. However, he quickly stopped himself because the real Harold would never cry like that. In his mind, doing something like that felt far too uncool for Harold. Just then, to his complete shock, he suddenly heard Erica's voice calling his name from behind him. Kazuki immediately became confused, wondering what Erica had come to talk about this time. And just like that, Erica appears out of absolutely nowhere. Talk about timing. Did she actually catch our boy shedding real tears, or did Kazuki luckily hide it just in time? Because let's be real, as if she did see him crying, the guilt is going to hit her like a truck. Imagine realizing this 10-year-old kid is carrying the weight of 2 territories completely alone while forcing the world to hate him. But how do you console a guy whose mouth automatically screams, "Get away from me, you annoying woman"? Will Erica be able to look past his cruel words now that she knows the tragic truth? Or is Kazuki going to accidentally roast his fiancée into running away? It is going to be a wild, emotional ride from here on out. Drop your wildest theories in the comments below. How do you think he survives this confrontation? Smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next part, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.